I'm about to talk about The Rookie for over 3 hours by putting all of my best videos together so you can fall asleep. Or you can actually watch it. That's cool too. Either way, let's do this. There have been dozens of episodes of The Rookie where the majority of the fan base praises them for how great they are. However, there's also episodes that the viewers thought were mediocre or even straight up trash. And today, we're going over the top 10 most hated episodes of The Rookie according to their ratings. And I'm going to explain why fans hated them. Starting with number 10 on our list, we have Season 3, Episode 4, Sabotage, with a 6.7 out of 10 rating. 6.7 doesn't sound like the worst thing in the world until you see that most episodes of the show are rated between an 8 to 9 out of 10. So why did people not like Sabotage? Part of the reason that this episode was disliked was because this was during the first half of Season 3, involving the Doug Stanton plotline that a lot of viewers weren't a big fan of. This also was an episode where Jackson just could not win, which was hard for the audience to watch. In the episode, there's multiple instances where Jackson is thrown off by Doug's discriminatory behavior. First, while on patrol, Doug stops a random person who's just walking down the street and then asks him a bunch of incriminating questions just based on his looks. Then, later in the episode, he forces an illegal search on a black woman all because she ran a stop sign. Then he arrests her for what he found. Lastly, he takes a teenage dealer around a corner to teach him a lesson and forces Jackson into a choice: watch the evidence and let it happen, or let the evidence be compromised and save the kid. Jackson chose the latter and found out that Doug set him up, since he knew about what Jackson was trying to do. Fans were not a fan of the writing for this episode as well. People wished that the writers were better at handling these issues, as these were real-life problems that were plaguing America at this given time. They also made Jackson and Lucy dumber in this episode, and people pointed this out. Bradford: I don't know Du's ex-partner. We need to be subtle. Then Chen immediately asks him if Doug is a racist. I get we're meant to hate Stanton, but Jackson with his "come on man" and expecting a positive reaction? Let's move on to number 9, where we have Season 3, Episode 2, Injustice, with a 6.4 out of 10 rating. This was also one of those episodes in the Doug Stanton / racism plotline that was in the 3rd season. I'm sure you're starting to see a theme here. However, there's a few reasons why this episode was rated even worse than Sabotage was. This was the first episode that Doug ever was featured in, so Doug's antics and racist remarks were super new and fresh to the audience, whereas by episode 4, people had already seen enough of Doug to be slightly more used to it. This episode was also the introduction of James Murray, a character that even nowadays is still considered a controversial character. And to be honest, the writers did both of these characters dirty on both of their first appearances. Firstly, with Doug, this was the first time we saw his racism shine. While on a burglary call, everything seemed normal until out of nowhere, Doug asks if the kid has any tattoos. When the kid shows them the dot on his arm, Doug jumps to him being in a gang and starts to victim blame the family, accusing them of owing someone money or having enemies with a different gang. Obviously, none of this is true, and Jackson has to play damage control with this call. Then we get to James's appearance. It starts with an arrest of a bag thief at a park, and James is filming it and starts arguing with the cops. No matter what Nolan, Doug, or even Jackson would tell James, he would not back down. Jackson does give James some really good advice though about getting his friend a lawyer. Then, later in the episode, after Nolan tries to help the community by fixing the lights at the park, James is confrontational with him. He starts accusing Nolan of trying to be a white savior when this was not Nolan's intention. While James did have good points about the systemic problems that plagued areas like where the community center is, he went overboard with how he handled his interactions with the LAPD, and it caused fans to believe that the wrong message was being sent in this episode. These things are why this episode landed such a mediocre rating. Coming in at number 8, we have Season 6, Episode 3, Trouble in Paradise, also rated at a 6.4 out of 10. Season 6 was plagued with a lot of issues, as it was written during the writer's strike. But this episode specifically did not land with the audience for one big reason: the main plot of Bailey and Nolan's honeymoon. First things first, Nolan and Bailey are a couple that people don't really like anyways, so having an entire episode centered around their honeymoon was a choice. You think the universe is maybe trying to tell Nolan and Bailey that they aren't meant to be together? People were hoping that this would be their breakup, and when it wasn't, they got disappointed. Another reason that people weren't a fan of this episode was the way that it was filmed and written. A good portion of this episode is filmed with a phone in a vlog style format, since they were trying to emulate a found footage horror movie. But it falls flat on its face and comes off as a cringy way to save a few bucks. All the scenes with Bailey and Nolan were filmed with an iPhone, it looks like, for some reason. Why? Did the show run out of a budget? I hate this filming style more than the docu episodes, to be honest. Did the writers watch Blair Witch Project for inspiration? Unfortunately, this episode was just doomed from the start, and the poor writing from the writer's strike didn't do it any favors with the audience. Number 7 on our list is going back to the 3rd season again with Season 3, Episode 3, La Fiera, rated a 6.2 out of 10. This one's going to be pretty quick because it has a lot of the same talking points as the other 2 episodes we mentioned from this season. But you definitely don't want to skip this, because this rating actually confuses me a bit. There's more Doug being a racist and getting on people's nerves. I hope that the new cop Doug isn't just being added for racism purposes. I have liked the actor's work in other shows and know he can play a better character than a racist cop. A lot of people are just upset at the whole writing style and narrative as a whole, but honestly, that's where the bad ends. I'm confused about how this episode was rated less than the previous 2, despite having a lot of positive feedback on it. One of the biggest positives that came out of this episode was the introduction of La Fiera, one of the most loved villains in the entire show. They introduced the complicated dynamic between her and Lopez, and people loved that too. So how did this land such a negative rating? I guess we'll never know. Moving on to number 6, we have Season 4, Episode 19, Simone, that is currently sitting at a 6.1 out of 10 rating. Now we're finally moving on from the same talking points and are getting to something new. This episode, alongside the episode after it, were a pair of backdoor pilot episodes for a new spin-off show that Alexi Hawley was starting called The Rookie Feds. One of the biggest things to come out of these 2 episodes was the introduction of a new character named Simone Clark. And if you were wondering why this episode was so disliked, it's because of Simone. Simone is a woman who is trying to become an FBI agent, and during this episode, she had to prove that she was FBI material. She was the main protagonist for the entire episode, and she interacted with pretty much everybody. And that's the problem that people had with this episode. They didn't like Simone in the first place. To fans, Simone just didn't make sense. She was not fit to be an FBI agent in any way, as she couldn't take the job seriously enough. Her instructor in the beginning said it himself. The FBI is a place where people would be fired for just having acne. They have super high standards, and Simone didn't fit them. Her use of honey and sweetie in the case had people annoyed, and they wanted her gone. LOL her? She was a super annoying know-it-all. There is zero chance her show takes off. She was terrible. This Simone character isn't doing it for me so far. I don't think I'll be watching the spinoff unless it has really good supporting characters. The low rating isn't just Simone's fault though, it's Bailey's too. Bailey was still a reasonably new addition at the time of this episode, and people were still not over how the episode was basically making her Superwoman. What's next for Bailey? Bailey as a barista, Bailey as an exotic dancer, Bailey as a real estate agent, Bailey as a hedge fund manager, Bailey as a lead mechanic at a Ferrari shop, Bailey as the police force's newest and bestest rookie. So Bailey is in the military while also being a firefighter? Does she also work for the CIA on weekends? It's safe to say that Bailey and Simone were the reasons for the episode's subpar rating. Interestingly, our number 5 spot is the very next episode, Season 4, Episode 20, Enervo, sitting at the exact same 6.1 out of 10 rating. This is another one of those entries where the reason why it's rated so low is the same as the previous one. Simone was still getting on people's nerves. They actually made her even more extroverted in this episode than the last one, which I didn't even know you could do that, but they did it. I hope I never have to see this character again. The most annoying person in the series. And Bailey wasn't any better either. Bailey's writing actually sucked in this episode, because given that she's part of the military, she should have been focused on the C4 rather than being a firefighter. These 2 episodes combined were a horrible way to introduce the Rookie Feds, and since people didn't like these episodes, they weren't going to try the new show. Please don't make this spinoff. it will fail. And guess what? One season in, it was canceled and never mentioned again. Who would have thought? Now we're going to see a giant plunge in the ratings for these last 4 episodes. At number 4, we have Season 4, Episode 16, Real Crime, with a 4.9 out of 10 rating. Our first episode to have a majority negative rating. So this episode is what the fans refer to as a documentary episode, in which the style of how they film the episode changes from how it usually is filmed, and it's changed into a documentary. In this episode, the documentary was about the Aaron Thorson case, where he was arrested and convicted of the murder of his best friend, Patrick Hayes. This entire episode was supposed to dive into finding who actually murdered him, as Aaron was exonerated of this much earlier on in the show. This episode is usually referenced as the best of the worst when talking about The Rookie, because this is the best documentary episode on the show. But this isn't saying much, as people hate the documentary episodes. People don't like the interviews, as it takes up valuable screen time that could have been used to actually show the audience something, rather than just telling us what happened in post. People saw it as just another filler episode that could have been made into an actual episode, and they thought that the showrunners did Aaron's story dirty by including it in one of these documentaries. Oh no, not this shit again. This was dreadful. Can they please stop doing these bullshit documentary episodes? Hated it, turned it off. I hate this style of episode. Interviewing every 5 minutes. Hate these documentary type episodes. I fast forwarded hoping it would be just for a part of the episode, but nah, ended up skipping the entire episode, just like the last one like this. However, there's one big positive that came out of this episode, and that's this clip.
And what do you think Q was trying to tell people with these Q drops, these cryptic messages?
Really wasn't trying to say anything. I'm Q.
Smitty is Q?
I'm sorry, what?
Lord, give me strength.
Moving on to number 3, we have Season 5, Episode 18, Double Trouble, rated at a 4.6 out of 10. This is another documentary episode that, at first glance, didn't stick the landing for the audience. This one centered around the murder of Jake, aka Dim, as well as his connection to Sava and Lisa. Obviously, the fact that this episode is another documentary episode is a big factor in why this episode is rated so low on the list. But this is another entry that has me confused about why it's on this list. I personally liked this episode, so I had to search online for why people didn't like it, and I was surprised by what I saw. People online did like it. I'll be the contrarian. This episode was so absurd and chaotic that it was fun as hell. I think this show does a good job balancing these absurd over-the-top episodes. You need these once in a while on this show. It was so unhinged and chaotic that I really enjoyed it, lol. I liked the interwoven stories and that we got to see Melissa O'Neill act a bunch. If anyone can tell me why this episode got such a low rating, let me know in the comments, because this one doesn't seem right to me. Now, on to the next episode. At our number 2 spot, we have Season 3, Episode 7, True Crime, which currently sits at a 4.5 out of 10. So this episode was the first of the 4 documentary episodes. So the reason that this episode sits so far down on the list is similar to why Injustice also got rated lower than the episodes like it. Since the show never did something like this before, the viewers were really confused while watching it. One of the biggest problems that this episode had was that since they never did an episode like this before, the plot was all over the place and made it pretty difficult to follow unless you were paying attention. Overall, people were not very happy with this change, and it makes you wonder why they chose to do it 3 more times. Okay, that was the worst episode I've ever seen on this great show. I could not last 20 minutes. WTF, what's with this trying new crap? That was the worst episode of all 3 seasons, hands down. What was that? Oh wow, y'all weren't kidding. I can't even finish this garbage. It's that bad. I don't know WTF the writers were thinking with this one. And now, at our number 1 spot, earning the title for the worst episode of The Rookie, is Season 7, Episode 15, A Deadly Secret, which is currently sitting at an abysmal 3.6 out of 10 rating. So we finally made it to the last documentary episode. I'm sure that long ago, you guys picked up that the top 4 hated episodes were all documentaries. This episode was everything wrong with the previous ones, and then you turn them up to a 100. By the 4th documentary episode, the audience was getting tired of it. No more documentary episodes. Please. I can maybe forgive the body cam ones, but 4 truly awful documentary episodes in 4 seasons. Please, no more. This episode centers around Abigail, the ex-fiance of Nolan's son Henry, and this episode completely ruined her character. In the first few seasons, viewers loved her. She was great to Henry, and it seemed like they were going to live happily ever after. But then we find out basically out of nowhere that they broke up years ago, and now she's some fame-chasing filmmaker that was super flaky. People didn't like how she was being portrayed in this episode, but this was just one of the 2 aspects of the show that were ruined during this episode. Chenford took a massive hit with this one too. For the majority of the season, they've been teasing the possibility of Lucy and Tim getting back together, and fans were starting to get antsy about when they would finally reunite. In this episode, they led up to this massive conversation that Tim and Lucy were going to have, and then the viewers were disappointed when all they got was a couple minutes of more teasing. That's the conversation we get? That's it? Are we surprised? All they've been doing is sprinkling bits of Chenford without really advancing anything at all, just to get their fans to tune in every episode. I'm not surprised it was that short, because they can continue dragging this out. Was that all with Chenford? That's it? What the hell? So overall, this episode was filled with ruining aspects of the show and combining them with an already hated format. Nothing could go wrong, right? Right? Anyways, those were the top 10 most hated episodes of The Rookie. There are some couples in The Rookie that are universally loved within the fan base, but there are also couples that are universally hated as well. So in this video, we're going to go over 5 of the most loved couples on the show, as well as 5 of the most hated. Starting with the couple that turned the show into a viral sensation, Tim Bradford and Lucy Chen, also known as Chenford. In the pilot episode of the show, Lucy, a rookie, gets paired up with her training officer, Tim Bradford. In the early seasons, Tim was very aggressive and strict, while Lucy was the opposite. Watching these two interact during season 1 and the beginning of season 2, you would feel like they would hate each other and could never picture them being friends, let alone dating. But over the course of 5 seasons, after both going through traumatic events that brought them closer together, what started out as a professional relationship turned into more, eventually leading them to admit their feelings for each other in season 5, episode 8, The Collar. The 5-season slow burn is one of the reasons why fans love the couple so much, because their intense chemistry was obvious even when they were just friends and both in other relationships. At the beginning of Tim and Lucy's relationship, they were already facing problems, as Tim was a sergeant with a higher rank and Lucy was a P2, which created a power imbalance. Because of the strain that this was putting on their potential relationship, Tim eventually transferred to Metro to avoid being in her chain of command, because Lucy was able to move around a bunch of people. This sacrifice made fans even more obsessed with the ship because it showed Tim's dedication to Lucy, that he was willing to transfer from the job that he loved if that meant that they could be together. Their relationship really made the show as popular as it is today, as Chenford edits started to go viral on TikTok, some of them racking up millions of views. It makes sense that once Lucy and Tim finally got together, fans went crazy because we were starting to wonder if it was ever going to happen. For years, we would get teased by the writers hinting at the possibility of Tim and Lucy being more than friends in the future, but it was always redacted in some way. In season 3, episode 9, Lucy tells Tim she has feelings for him, but in the end, it turns out that she was just pranking him. This put the idea in fans' heads that there was a possibility, since Tim technically didn't decline nor reciprocate those feelings towards her. And in season 4, episode 22, Day in the Hole, they kissed as preparation for an undercover mission where they had to act like they were a couple. You could tell that this kiss meant more to both of them, but they wouldn't express their feelings until much later. Although the wait wasn't unnecessarily long, the buildup of their relationship is eventually what made them getting together much more satisfying, until they broke up in season 6, episode 6, Secrets and Lies. Ever since the breakup, we are back on the writer's teeter-totter of will they get back together or won't they, until season 8 comes out. On the flip side, before Chenford took over the fandom, Lucy had another relationship at the very beginning of the show with none other than fellow rookie John Nolan. And this is one of the most hated relationships in the entire show. This relationship was short-lived, starting in the pilot episode only for them to break up in Season 1, Episode 4, The Switch. During the couple's brief relationship, they left a lasting impression on fans and are hated for many reasons. The main one being the large 18-year age gap between the two of them. Nolan being 46 and starting his life over in the pilot, as well as Lucy being in her late 20s. The two never seemed like they belonged together, as they were both in very different stages of their lives. Their relationship also felt forced, like they were just together because there was no one else around. Early on, the age difference started to impact their relationship. When John's training officer, Talia Bishop, found out about the two, she warned Lucy that dating him would brand her and damage her reputation, and she would not be taken seriously, even though there was no power imbalance. This is interesting considering in later seasons, when Lucy dates Tim, the whole branding scenario is never brought up again. That double standard, though, went unnoticed, as fans preferred Lucy to be with Tim rather than Nolan anyways, because her relationship with Nolan is seen as boring and stale, whereas the grumpy sunshine dynamic between her and Tim creates a more interesting story. What's even more interesting is that as far as we know, the only people who know about Lucy's relationship with Nolan are his T.O. Bishop and later on Jackson. But the secret seems to die with him, as it's almost non-existent within the show that they dated. So it begs the question, how would Tim react if he ever found out about Lucy and Nolan? Hopefully we find out someday. While Nolan and Lucy didn't last long, a loved couple that's been together since Season 1 as well is Angela Lopez and Wesley Evers. In Season 1, Episode 10, Flesh and Blood, Angela and Wesley first meet when Angela is helping Wesley catch a man who had stolen his briefcase.
Stop that guy, he's getting away.
Let go of me.
Calm down.
Calm down. I was just chasing the guy that stole my briefcase. You're supposed to identify yourself before you engage a suspect.
Do you want to file a report on your briefcase or keep telling me how to do my job?
However, when Angela caught him, Wesley didn't approve of how she took the suspect down, sparking a heated argument between the two of them. This interaction perfectly captured their chemistry and contrasting personalities, clearly hinting at romantic tension behind the surface. Later in the episode, Wesley asks Angela out on a date, starting what would become one of the most consistent and beloved relationships on The Rookie. Over the seasons, we see both characters fight through real challenges due to their jobs, like when Wesley lied and worked for Elijah Stone, or when La Fiera kidnapped Angela to Guatemala. Their traumatic experiences often brought them closer together instead of tearing them apart, which is one of the reasons why the couple is among the healthiest on the show. Even within the midst of the chaos and trauma from their jobs, their relationship never loses its spark, in part due to Angela's fiery personality that often clashes with Wesley's calm, by-the-book demeanor. Angela also never shies away from cracking jokes about Wesley's rich family or his trust fund, which ensures that there's never a dull moment with these two in the room. More importantly, beneath all the humor lies a deep devotion to one another. Angela and Wesley would do anything for each other, and that is especially demonstrated when Wesley willingly put his own life at risk to save Angela after she was kidnapped by the Guatemalan cartel. That moment proved how fearless they are when it comes to protecting one another. Even after everything, they are now married with 2 kids. So I think it's safe to say that they make one badass duo, and it's easy to see why they are one of the most loved characters on the show. But yet, despite having a beautiful and consistent love story, Angela and Wesley don't get the spotlight that they deserve, and are frequently overshadowed by the viral pairing of Chenford. It's also not uncommon to go multiple episodes without seeing any Lopez scenes at all. This is frustrating for fans who followed Lopez since the beginning, just to see them be underutilized since Tim and Lucy became a thing. Now, where Wesley and Angela's relationship has been the most consistent, Nyla and James' relationship has been a drama-filled roller coaster. James and Nyla as a couple are often hated within the fanbase, mostly because of their constant fighting and lack of communication due to their careers. The pair first meet in Season 3, Episode 2, Injustice, at James' Community Center, where he's working to correct the justice system and push for police reform. This naturally creates tension in their relationship since Nyla is an LAPD officer, and James is often very critical of the exact system that she works in. Even with their conflicting morals, James decided to not only date but willingly marry a cop. And as if their conflicting careers wasn't enough reason to dislike the couple, James is controversial enough on his own. His constant criticism of the police, while valid at times, often comes across as closed-minded, as he almost refuses to acknowledge any of the good work police officers do, completely undermining Nyla's work and the good that she's done as an officer. To make matters worse, their relationship felt rushed and moved way too fast as they got pregnant, married, with no real proposal by the way, and moved in together all within a short period of time without addressing their underlying issues. It almost feels like they thought if they just pushed forward and got married, their problems would be resolved. But even into season 7, they continue to argue about the same things. So we'll just have to wait until season 8 to see where they stand. And although it's clear that they love each other and are willing to make sacrifices, like Nyla getting into police reform specifically to please James, it's hard to see them lasting due to their differences. So while their relationship is filled with conflict and tension, you could say the complete opposite for Wade and Luna. They are one of the most loved couples on The Rookie because of their wholesome and loving moments that are not often seen in the show's other couples amidst all the chaos. A great example of this would be in season 4, episode 21, Mother's Day.
And voila.
You bought me a horse.
No riding lessons.
Wade gives Luna horseback riding lessons as a meaningful gift on Mother's Day. This is especially a sweet gesture as it's something to take their mind off the fact that their daughter just left home for college. Luna has also been very thoughtful in their marriage as she has continued to be supportive of Wade's decision to keep working in the LAPD even though she'd prefer he retire. What makes the couple even more lovable is that Luna is seen as the happiest character on the show, and her positive attitude often reflects on their marriage. Despite whatever situation she's in, she continues to be optimistic, like in season 3 episode 4, Sabotage, when Nolan's mom Evelyn scammed her out of a CBD oil business deal, or in season 5 episode 9, Take Back, when her daughter was missing. Even throughout all of that, she stayed calm and optimistic, so it's easy to see why she's seen as the happiest character in the entire show. What also sets Wade and Luna apart from the other couples is that their relationship did not develop on screen, and they are the only couple involving a main character that has been together since the start of the show. In season 4, it's actually mentioned that they've already been married for 25 years at that point, which definitely predates the show if you didn't know that. Just the fact that they've been together that long with no on-screen drama, it's easy to see that they are the healthiest relationship on the show. In comparison though, Selena and Raj are one of the most hated as well as the newest couple on the show. Though Selena has been recurring in the show since season 5, Raj was first introduced as a nameless one-off gag character when Nolan and Selena responded to a call and found him singing the show's now iconic song, Daddy Cop. And then he was found again in season 6 episode 2, The Hammer. Raj was later given a recurring role as Selena's boyfriend in season 7 episode 10, Chaos Agent. Fans were not fond of his more significant role in the show, but it had little to do with the character and more about the actor himself. Much of the backlash stemmed from the belief that nepotism is what led the actor to becoming a recurring character, rather than talent, since Xander Hawley, who plays Raj, is the son of the show's creator, Alexi Hawley. The nepotism is specifically believable since his character's acting often falls flat compared to the rest of the cast. His relationship with Selena is also similar, as they only seem to crack jokes and are rarely affectionate with one another. This makes sense since all Raj has proven to be so far is the comedic relief character. In comparison, a ship with Selena that seems to have more potential is her and Aaron Thorson. Aaron first appeared as a new rookie in season 4 episode 2, 5 Minutes. Later, the two became close friends who bonded over the game Dungeons & Dragons. The two got even closer after they were attacked by a group of masked men, during which Aaron was shot. This led Aaron to kiss and develop feelings for Selena due to the trauma they both experienced. Although Selena did not reciprocate those feelings and their relationship remained platonic, the chemistry was there between the two, unlike with Selena and Raj. However, there was amazing chemistry between another couple, Nolan and Grace. Grace first appeared in season 2, episode 2, The Night General, when she and Nolan run into each other at Shaw Memorial Hospital, after not seeing each other for over 20 years. It's clear that they had a lot of chemistry with each other. Later in the episode, it's revealed that Nolan met Grace during his junior year of college when he and his now ex-wife Sarah were broken up. Turns out that he and Grace were in a serious relationship, but it was cut short. Sarah showed up at Nolan's dorm with the news that she was pregnant, and Nolan broke up with Grace shortly after leaving her a note and then disappearing, which she still seemed to be upset by. And I definitely do not blame her for that. So it's easy to say that they fit the exact definition of the one that got away. At the end of the episode, we learn that Grace is married and has an 8-year-old son, but that is later redacted as she tells Nolan that she and her husband, Simon, have been separated for over a year. Eventually, this leads them to go on a date and rekindle their relationship. One of the reasons that made the couple work so well is they had a lot of life experience in common, both having had kids, gotten divorced, and moving to Los Angeles pretty recently. Nolan and Grace were also both emotionally mature within their relationship, as even though Grace had a lingering grudge towards him from their initial breakup, she was able to put that aside and decided to try being friends with him despite that. In addition to that, Nolan was very patient with Grace when she was contemplating fixing things with her husband in Season 2, Episode 18, Under the Gun. This was very sad considering how loved the couple was, as Nolan practically begged her not to go back to her husband, but sadly, they broke up in the same episode. While Nolan and Grace had a mature relationship and eventually broke up, the same cannot be said for Lucy and Chris, as they ended up being one of the most hated pairings in the show, and it wasn't even really their fault. Lucy and Chris first met in Season 4, Episode 10, Heartbeat, when they started arguing due to opposing views on prosecuting a drug dealer. Their relationship officially starts when Tim sets up a double date with him, his girlfriend Ashley, Chris, and Lucy. Lucy and Chris's relationship, as well as Tim and Ashley's, were seen as the last hurdle to finally getting Tim and Lucy together, as neither of these relationships felt genuine and were both in the way of what was actually meant to be, which was Chenford. From early on in their relationship, Chris often came off as emotionally tone deaf and on multiple occasions failed to notice Lucy's hesitation about moving forward with their relationship. And at one point, he even referred to her as his girlfriend before she even agreed to that label. So there was no surprise when he repeatedly rushed their relationship, particularly when he suddenly brought up the idea of buying a house together and impulsively started to look at listings without any prior discussion, automatically assuming that they were on the same page when they weren't. One of Chris's most criticized moments is when Lucy and Chris were making coffee while taking a break from trial prep. Chris casually started to hum Dream a Little Dream of Me.
Yep.
I'm so sorry.
The song was stuck in your head because you've seen the video.
Well, yeah.
Which is the song that Lucy had sung when she was buried alive during her kidnapping. Even though he had been watching the Barrel video while prepping for trial, the fact that he could casually hum the song associated with the most traumatic event in his girlfriend's life shows how completely unaware and insensitive he truly is. The couple finally broke up in Season 5, Episode 9, Take Back. As in the previous episode, Lucy and Tim finally admitted their feelings for each other, which is something fans have been waiting for many seasons. Now, before we get on to our final most hated couple, let's rapid fire two of the most loved couples who are not always in the spotlight, but are just as lovable as the others, starting with Pete and Chastity. Nolan's half-brother Pete, as well as Chastity, first appear in Season 2, Episode 13, Follow-Up Day, when Pete meets Chastity outside the Mid-Wilshire station. These two instantly hit it off and began dating. Even though they've only appeared in 3 episodes together, their chaotic energy is always entertaining. During their rare appearances, something wild always seems to happen, whether that be stealing Nolan's car or having a pregnancy scare. Although despite their limited screen time, Pete and Chastity are comedic gold, and every time they show up, it's guaranteed to be hilarious and pure chaos. The couple's last on-screen appearance together was in Season 4, Episode 22, Day in the Hole. Chastity, however, has appeared in 2 more episodes without Pete, even though he was mentioned. There always seemed to be an excuse for his absence. Since Pete hasn't been in any episodes in the past 3 seasons, fans are wondering if he'll ever make a return. Another loved couple who hasn't been seen since Season 4 is Elroy and Nell. Elroy, an awkward crime scene cleaner, was first introduced in Season 2, Episode 8, Cleanup, when he met Nolan at a crime scene. Despite Elroy's high-strung personality, he and Nolan formed a genuine friendship. Wanting to help his new friend, Nolan introduced Elroy to Nell, a mid-Wilshire dispatcher that he had a crush on but had only spoken to over the phone. Their initial interactions were adorably awkward, but things quietly developed off-screen. In Season 4, Episode 22, Day in the Hole, once again, it's revealed that Elroy and Nell have been dating and traveling together for some time. Although the couple hasn't been seen since Season 4, their cute, nerdy dynamic makes them not only a fan favorite, but one of the cutest and most wholesome couples in the show. While these two have quietly earned a place in fans' hearts, the same cannot be said for the next couple we are covering today, Nolan and Bailey. Their relationship begins in Season 3, Episode 14, Threshold, when Bailey, who is only wearing a towel, knocks on Nolan's door, explaining that she got locked out of his house that she's dog sitting at.
Hello!
Hi, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm dog sitting for your neighbors and I kind of locked myself out. Thank God, yes.
Nolan then lends her the spare key and one of his hoodies, and in the same scene, they plan a date for later that night. Just by their initial interaction, it was obvious that Bailey was going to be Nolan's new love interest, but the chemistry just was never there between the two of them. Although they often express their love for each other, there's very little emotional depth between them. Their relationship also faced major problems early on when it was revealed that Bailey was in an abusive relationship with her husband Jason, and she did not tell Nolan about this. While most viewers sympathize with her fear, this is when fans started to be hesitant about her character, as Bailey started to become a controversial character all on her own. Despite her impressive background as a firefighter and in the Army Reserve, her character felt underdeveloped and was mostly defined by her relationship with Nolan, as well as all of her characteristics, as well as all of the talents that she's seemingly able to do. One of the biggest turning points in fan perception came during the Malvado storyline, when Bailey gaslit Nolan and expected him to overlook the fact that she gave a hitman his ex-husband's location and basically was an accessory to murder. Rather than acknowledging how serious this was, she tried to shift the blame and make Nolan feel guilty for being upset, and she expected him to prioritize their relationship over his duties as a police officer. Considering the whole show, compared to his past relationships, Bailey just didn't stack up, as Nolan's dynamic with his other relationships had much more chemistry. Grace, Jessica, Lucy, okay, Bailey's better than Lucy, but still, their relationship lacked emotional depth and realism. What's even more surprising is that for some reason, nowadays people are starting to ship Nolan with Tim's sister, Jennifer, who he's only done a few scenes with. People claim that they have even more chemistry than Bailey and Nolan do, which I'll be honest, I don't see, but you gotta let me know in the comments if you guys see it. Even though Nolan and Bailey did end up getting married in Season 6, Episode 2, The Hammer, and recently in Season 7 have been trying to adopt, the couple doesn't quite seem to hit the mark with fans, along with all the other most hated couples on this list. Those are all the most loved and most hated couples on The Rookie. In this video, I'm going to take 25 of the most important characters in The Rookie and I'm going to rank them on a tier list, with S being the best of the best and F being the worst characters in the show. By the way, these are just my opinions, but I'd like to hear your guys' list down in the comments. Anyways, let's get right into this. First up, we have John Nolan, the initial main character and person to root for in the show. And I agree with all of that, so I'm giving him S tier. I really liked Nolan from the very beginning. He is someone that I really enjoyed watching grow, not only as a police officer, but also as a person. We saw someone so much older and set in their ways as many others would be. But despite that, he overcame these obstacles and became a top tier police officer. And I think that's really commendable. So I'm pretty content with putting him in S tier. Moving on to Lucy Chen. And I think I'm going to give her A tier. I know this is going to rile people up, so let me explain. I love Lucy, and I think that she's come a long way since she started. She overcame a lot of obstacles in her career too, and seeing her become a sergeant so quickly really shows how dedicated she is to the job. The reason that I can't put her in S tier though is while I do like Chenford as a whole, I think that the writers kind of watered down her character once they started focusing on them. A lot of her characters started becoming Tim's second half, and I think that she just deserves better than that. Speaking of Chenford, I'm going to also put Tim Bradford at A tier. My reason for bringing him down is very similar to why Lucy was knocked down. I feel like Chenford took over a lot of his personality too. In the earlier seasons, Tim is a really great contrast to a lot of the other characters he interacted with. He was more rigid and emotionally guarded than the other characters, which made for some very entertaining interactions. For example, someone like Lopez would push his buttons, and I think that would be really funny. I would say he's higher in A tier than Lucy though, only because I believe the personality change he went through has been more positive for his character growth, and I want to give him credit for that. Next up, we have Jackson West, and I'm going to put all of his actor drama to the side and just talk about his character here. I'm going to give Jackson a C tier on my list. For the first 2 seasons, I think Jackson would have been a high B or low A tier character for me. He was charming, really dedicated to his job, and overcame a lot of the issues that he had in the very beginning, like when he used to freeze up during shootouts. However, I think Season 3 changed his fate for me. His Season 3 version is pretty below average, as his personality changed completely for the worst. He became more agitated and one-dimensional, and his friendship with Nolan and Lucy began to crumble as he got too focused on the rest of his issues. And I didn't like that, so I'm gonna have to put him lower. Let's get back to something positive, shall we? Angela Lopez. She is an immediate S tier character for me. She is probably my second favorite character in the entire show. Her personality is top tier. Her sarcasm and how she interacts with others is hilarious, and I find myself locking into any scene she's in. I also think that her dedication to her family is one of the most wholesome parts of the show. I'm a big Lopez fan, so I love watching Lopez scenes anytime they come up, but recently they started showing them less and less, and that really bums me out. Not to mention how much of a badass she is. Overall, as close to perfection as you can get. So the next character's only been on 1 season, so I don't really have a lot to go off of here, but I'm gonna put Talia Bishop at B tier. I like her character as a whole, and I think she was a good TO for Nolan, though I don't think she was the best one he could have got. She went into it with a lot of judgment, and their interactions weren't always the best they could have been. I also feel like her exit was extremely abrupt, and knowing she wasn't coming back, it felt like a bit of a cop-out. I think she's redeemed a bit by her TO talks with Lopez and Tim though. Those were always really fun to watch. She's not a bad character at all, just not as great as our next one. Part of the reason Talia was so low is because after season 1, we got Nyla Harper, and she is also 100% an S tier character. I think Nyla was everything Bishop was supposed to be, but done even better. She was the TO that Nolan needed to really thrive. And despite her personal objections, she was patient with him and gave him room to grow, like any good TO should. Her detective plotlines with Lopez are some of the best stories in the show, and they bounce off each other so well. I think pretty much all the things I said about Lopez can be said about Nyla, and so I think she deserves to be up there with Lopez as well. Now on to Wesley Evers, and I'm going to give him B tier. I'm a fan of Wesley for the most part. I will say though that if we're just talking about his last few seasons, he'd be A tier for me. I just think that the beginning of his character in the first couple of seasons was very obnoxious. I initially didn't think Lopez and Wesley were good for each other, and I was waiting for their breakup. But it never happened, and I'm so glad that it never did. They are so good with each other, and Wesley didn't let his disagreements with policing get in the way of their relationship. And I think he changed a lot when he moved to being a district attorney. He began to understand policing better, and he became much better of a character as a result. Now let's talk about our newest P2, Selena Juarez. I think she also deserves B tier for the exact same reason that Wesley does, where her character initially started rough and then became better later on. I'll be honest with you guys, I was not a fan of Selena in season 5 and the first half of season 6. I didn't like all of the horoscope and aura stuff being put into her police work, and I was very surprised when Nolan wouldn't bounce her for it. But after Nolan did some work on her and found out she just had natural intuition, she became the most impressive rookie on the entire show. And I love her sister-like bond that she has with Lucy. Overall, very good character, and that's why she still deserves B tier. Alright, here's where I know people are going to think I'm just glazing him, but I think that Aaron Thorson is my favorite character in the entire show, and he's getting put at the very top of S tier. I love Aaron, and I have since his first appearance. His backstory was very complex, and I liked what the show did with it, especially with the story being based off a real-life event. I thought that was a really nice touch. Aaron and Selena's friendship was super sweet too, and I was hurt when their friendship started showing cracks after Aaron tried kissing her. I am really hoping that he returns in season 8, and I've been stalking their social media hoping that we could get some confirmation for this soon. Now let's move on to Lieutenant Wade Gray, and I'm going to give him A tier. I think that Gray is a great character all around, and I love his interactions with every single person on the show. He is an amazing leader. but I'm gonna have to dock him some points because of how he treated Nolan in the beginning. I really didn't like how he immediately jumped down Nolan's throat trying to get him to quit. I understand that he didn't want a bunch of new middle-aged rookies, but Nolan was clearly equipped since he made it through the program. But once Gray got over all of that and started to respect Nolan, he became a great character. Next up, someone else that's related to Nolan, we have Bailey Noon, and I'm gonna give her C tier. Look, I don't hate Bailey like some people online do, but I think that she is written poorly. She isn't just part of the LAFD, she basically is the LAFD. And she can do practically anything and is supposed to be this super badass woman, but I think she's doing so much to where it doesn't make sense anymore. I do think Nolan and Bailey are good together, and they're both very well-rounded and career-driven people, but when focused on her individual writing, I think she just falls flat. Alright, here's the first mostly negative entry on the list. Nyla's husband, James Murray. And I'm going to be putting him at a solid D tier. I'm just not a big fan of James, really. He's basically Wesley, but without the part where he eventually comes around. Even in the newest season, he still pushes Nyla's buttons and gets all in her business. And I just never understood why he intentionally married a cop if he has such a problem with the police system. And she even tries her best to help him out, but he still isn't grateful for it. I will give him credit for still being extremely loving towards her, and it's clear that she loves her very much. I also like him and Wesley's friendship, but overall, he's more negative than positive for me. Luna Gray is up next, and I'm gonna give her an S tier. I love Luna overall. She's very loving to everybody. Her husband, the other police officers, pretty much everybody she meets. There is not one evil bone inside of her body. And I have her ranked so high, even higher than her husband, because she's just a great breath of fresh air compared to the rest of the show. There's so much chaos and negativity, and then you got Luna coming in, making everything as wholesome as she can be. I want to see more of her, and I would like to see more of Wade and Luna's home life if possible. Come on, showrunners, please. Now let's talk about my favorite villain in the entire show, Oscar Hutchinson. I'm giving him S tier as well. I know I've given out a lot of S tiers, but can you blame me? A lot of the characters in this show are amazing, and Oscar is one of those characters. He's an evil psychopath, but he does it in such a fun way. I love his banter with Nolan, and I think the way that he operates is unique compared to other villains in the show. He'll do whatever he needs to get what he wants, even if it helps people he doesn't like. Some villains just feel the same as others, but nobody will ever be like Oscar. Another villain that I really like is Rosalind Dyer, and I'm going to give her A tier. I think she's a very good villain. She's incredibly smart and was always one step ahead of the LAPD, but she does it in a way that honestly feels more realistic than some of the others that we'll talk about later. I also liked her and Nolan's dynamic as well. I was fascinated by the way that she would only talk to him because she was so intrigued by him. I think that she would have went on a bit longer as a villain if her actress wasn't taken away from us so soon. Alright, now for a villain that I'm not exactly the biggest fan of, Elijah Stone, and I'm going to rank him in C tier. I think Elijah was a pretty interesting villain in the beginning, but what really plagued him was that he overstayed his welcome. Having Wesley dealing with how to handle Elijah was cool because we hadn't had a major plotline involving Wesley yet by this point, from the Lafayette situation all the way up to being his corrupt lawyer. But then he just stayed. And I'm glad that the showrunners decided to end his run pretty quickly into season 5, because that would have gotten quite annoying. Like Monica Stevens. Slap her right into F tier. I hate Monica. Everything I disliked about Elijah, I dislike about her even more. She's been around for 2.5 seasons now, and I think that's a season and a half too long. She was okay as a corrupt lawyer, but then the writers decided to turn her into this all-powerful criminal mastermind, and I just lost all interest in her. When she showed up again in season 7, episode 11, Speed, I audibly groaned. And then when she showed up in the finale, I was floored. I hope that they throw her out super early into season 8 like they did with Elijah. They just need to get her out of here. Okay, let's take a quick break for someone more positive. Miles Penn. And I'm going to give him a solid B tier. I wasn't initially sold on Penn when he was introduced, as I kind of got annoyed by the whole Texas thing, but I started to get used to it as the season went on, and I'm starting to like him a lot more. I like his friendship with Selena and Lucy, as well as I think he and Tim are a really good pair. He's showing a lot of improvement as a cop too, which is commendable. Overall, solid character who gets a solid rating. But unfortunately, that break didn't last long, because now we're going to talk about my least favorite character in the entire show. Seth Ridley. F tier all the way. I wish I could give him even worse than an F. I hate Seth very, very much. He has zero redeeming qualities, other than him shooting a guy who was going to shoot Nolan. But with his lying and him being an awful person, I'm just not convinced that he did that for entirely selfless reasons, especially since he was just asking Nolan about how to gain favor back with the rest of the LAPD. There is nothing good about him. He has put many people, including himself, into danger with his sloppiness. I know that he's coming back, and I hope that he can change for the better, but it's going to take a lot of work to raise him out of F tier. Okay, now that that's over, let's talk about Smitty. I think that he's a solid A tier character. He's hilarious. I think that out of every side character in the show, he is the best one. He's got some of the best bits in the show. One of my favorites is this one.
I'm Q.
Smitty is Q?
I'm sorry, what?
Lord, give me strength.
Like, what? One thing I would love, though, is if the showrunners could give us a Smitty-centered episode. Please, if anyone from the show is watching this, please make it happen. Next up is Skip Tracer Randy, and I'm going to give him a C tier. I think for me, I like him when he's in small bursts, like when he's a cameo character in one episode of a season or so. But when I don't like him is when he's a more important character in an episode, or if he's just in too many episodes of a season. Like in season 7, episode 17, Mutiny and the Bounty. I think that episode is just way too much Skip Tracer Randy for me. He's someone that I could do without most of the time, but if he shows up for something every once in a while, I'm not going to be upset.
There's your answer.
Drop the German! Put the German down!
Tamara Collins is up next, and I'm giving her a solid B tier. Tamara has been a good addition to the show and has really helped with solidifying Lucy's character as an extremely compassionate person. Tamara's brought out a lot of Lucy's personality, and I have to give her credit for that. I also think that she's pretty badass in a different way than someone like Lopez. She just doesn't take any crap. And most of the time, I think that's hilarious to watch. But her involvement with Seth really brought her down for me, especially when Lucy and Tamara's friendship almost crumbled because of that filth. I'm glad it didn't and that she came back to the light, but I can't ignore it. Heading to the earlier seasons, we have Nick Armstrong, and I'm going to give him C tier. Nick is the opposite of someone like Selena or Wesley. He started out great and then fell off tremendously. I loved him and Nolan's interactions. I think that Nick was a great part of Nolan's journey, and I liked his backstory, including his involvement with the Rosalind Dyer case. And then the end of season 2 happened and completely ruined him. Why did he have to become evil? It was purely meant for shock value, and we lost a very good character from this. They could have at least done this with a less likable character where it wouldn't hurt as much. I just can't forgive it. And now we have Captain Zoe Anderson. She is 100% an S tier character as well. I know that she was also only in the first season, so we really don't have much to go off of, but from the very beginning, I loved her. Her being the only person up the chain of command to believe in Nolan was very wholesome, and her and Nolan's interactions were perfect. I just hate that we lost her so soon. I'm not going to dock her character points for that because that's not the character's fault. But I wish the show waited at least a couple of more seasons before doing this, because it was one of the saddest moments in the show for me, and it happened super early on. And I will continue to miss Anderson very much. Anyways, that's the entire tier list. Did you agree with me? Let me know in the comments. There is a lot, and I mean a lot, of death in The Rookie. Even some of the most notorious and loved characters have died in some of the most gruesome ways. But what about the times that characters almost died but survived despite the odds? Today, we're going to go over every time that the Rookie characters almost died. Let's start with one of the most well-known instances of a main character almost dying, which is in Season 2, Episode 11, Day of Death. I think we all know what I'm talking about, but for those who don't know or need a refresher, this is the episode after Lucy was kidnapped by Caleb Wright. The episode started with nobody knowing where Lucy was, and she had been missing for upwards of 13 hours by this point. And given the 24-hour window that it takes for one of his victims to die, it means that the LAPD was running out of time quickly. Lucy is not a quitter though, and she definitely wasn't one during this episode. When she was tied on the chair and was close to getting put in that barrel inside the house, she broke the chair and started to make a run for it. Unfortunately, she failed, which is when Caleb decided to upgrade his crazy plan. By burying her in the barrel underground, Lucy had even less oxygen to work with while waiting for the LAPD to save her. She sat there quietly, singing to herself to keep her sane while the oxygen level got lower and lower. It seems like it was over for her, until Tim saw the ring that she dropped outside of where she was buried, and she was saved. This definitely is one of, if not the most famous example of a character almost dying in the show. And it did an amazing job at telling the audience that they weren't going to hold back with what they had planned, even if it was going to emotionally torture us. This next example of a main character almost dying happened over 3 seasons later and is personally my favorite on the list. Season 5, Episode 22, Under Siege, is the episode in which Selena Juarez and Aaron Thorson were brutally attacked by the crew of masked men in the alley. While Selena was badly injured during the situation, she wasn't the one on death's doorstep. It was Aaron. He was wheeled into the hospital with Bailey, to the horror of Lopez and Wesley. Nolan, with the help of Selena, tries to decipher the cryptic message that one of the masked men told her while she was taken out. And while they're confused at first, they get to work finding out what it means. Meanwhile, the rest of the LAPD made it their highest priority to catch the guys who put Aaron in this condition. Slowly but surely, the pieces come together for both the message as well as who is behind the attempted killing. During all of this, the operations are not going well. The doctors are panicking, and his vitals are dropping. That night, the killers come back, but for Nolan and Bailey this time, as well as Nyla and James right after. Luckily, they were unsuccessful on both fronts, and this is what led to finding where the mask came from. A one-act play that sold their assets over the years until they landed in the hands of Roy Greco, as well as his crew of past convicts. The LAPD take out the crew of grunts, but they miss the real villain behind it all, who is revealed at the end of the episode. But what's also revealed at the end is Aaron being wheeled into emergency surgery, and this was the cliffhanger that the season ended on. Luckily, he heals up by the middle of the first episode of season 6, but when season 5 ended, nobody knew if Aaron was going to be okay. For months, the audience was scared that Aaron was actually going to die, and this is what makes this instance one of my favorites. Next up, we have to go to the beginning of season 5, all the way back in episode 4, The Choice. And this instance is none other than Bailey Noon being trapped in the chamber of death created by Rosalind Dyer. This episode, like the last one, jumps right into the thick of it, as not even 3 minutes into this episode, Bailey falls into the chamber and is stuck without any help until the LAPD arrive. At first, Nolan and everyone else were just gonna bust through the grate and get her out, but then she shows them that there are actually a whole bunch of other booby traps laid around the chamber. That's when the water begins to start rising, and Nolan gets the call from Rosalind, where he is sent on a wild goose chase to get to her. Meanwhile, as he has to ditch his things and drive away, the water level just continues to rise. The LAPD realizes that unless someone got her out of there, she was going to be electrocuted by the grate. Nolan finally gets to Rosalind, and a live feed is waiting there for him. Rosalind gives Nolan an option: either take the gun she hands him and shoot her in order to save Bailey, or he does nothing and she will slowly die in front of his eyes. The water level is at dangerous levels by this point, and they need to get her out fast. The LAPD find the generator, and the plan is set. And as Tim says,
"Look, she's cold, she's exhausted, everything has to work perfectly in order for us to save her."
Nolan decides not to shoot her and trust his gut, and the LAPD cut the generator. Bailey is then forced to go under the water while the booby traps are going off on the surface. If she goes up to the surface, she dies, but if she stays underwater too long, she also dies. Eventually, she goes limp. Luckily, they cut the grate just in time, and Selena jumps in to go get her. Some CPR later, and Bailey is resuscitated. She was likely seconds away from death in there, and without everybody's help, she would have been as good as dead. Moving on to our next episode, we have to go back to season 3, episode 5, Lockdown. And for this one, we're going to talk about the time that Jackson West almost died while on patrol with Doug Stanton. I know that Jackson ends up dying later in the series, but this is an example of when he almost died much sooner. Unlike the other episodes from earlier in this list, this episode doesn't actually center around the near-death experience. Instead, it's at the end of the episode, so we're just going to focus on that. In the final quarter of the episode, Doug and Jackson are responding to a call that comes from Manor Apartments, one of the most dangerous spots in all of Los Angeles. And when they get there, Jackson runs into the suspects they were after. They slowly were approaching him until one of them jumps from behind his back and takes Jackson down. They proceeded to beat him, kick him, and make him bleed until he wasn't moving. And while all of this was happening, Doug was just watching it happen. He didn't call for backup. He didn't go in to save his partner. No, he just sat and watched, and then slowly backed up so that he didn't have to keep witnessing it. I plan on making a whole video about the Doug Stanton plotline in the future, so make sure to leave a like if you want me to make it happen. Anyways, Jackson is wheeled away in critical condition, and while he ends up being okay in the hospital by the end of the episode, it was clear that just a little longer of a beating could have easily killed him, and that's why this is on the list. With this next one, we have to time travel all the way back to season 1 with the pilot episode of the show. We're going to talk about the first ever near-death experience that was shown on The Rookie, and that was with Tim Bradford during the shooting in the alley. Once again, this episode doesn't just focus on Tim's near-death experience, considering it is the pilot. So we're going to just jump forward to when it actually happened. About 32 minutes into the episode, the suspect matching the bolo that the LAPD got earlier has been spotted, and Tim and Lucy respond to it. They decide to call him back up, and that's when Nolan, Bishop, Lopez, and Jackson are starting to head that way. But they don't get there until after the shootout begins. And shortly after said shootout started, Tim was shot in the chest right through the window. This forces Lucy to give up on shooting them to go and save Tim. Tim is bleeding out at this point and is in critical condition, but he still tells Lucy to keep shooting back instead of trying to patch him up. That's when everyone else shows up, and Nolan and Bishop are able to safely apprehend Selby. We don't see Tim again until the next episode since he needed to heal, but it's insane that in the pilot episode, the show already made the audience think that one of the officers was going to die. Also, unlike the rest of these instances though, this actually is not the only near-death experience that Tim faced though, and it's actually technically not even the only one in the first season. Let's jump ahead to season 1, episode 20, Freefall, as this involves the virus situation that the LAPD had to contain, especially Tim and Lucy, since Tim was locked inside the room with the man who was dying of the disease. It was unknown if he was going to make it before the experimental vaccine was going to get to him, since he didn't have any symptoms and it really hadn't been that long since the man that was infected had died. Luckily, the vaccine did make it in time and he was able to get it administered, but the virus isn't actually the only near-death experience that he faced within this situation. It was the vaccine itself as well, as at the very end of this episode, Tim collapses on the ground with everyone around him. Going into the first episode of season 2, he's having a severe reaction to the vaccine that puts him into anaphylactic shock, and it looked like it was going to get worse until the shooting in the front of the hospital started and distracted everybody. It was unknown how Tim was doing until he busted out of the ambulance and is shown to be just fine. Now let's move on to a more recent example that happened in the middle of season 7, with season 7 episodes 8 and 9, Wildfire and The Kiss. I lump both episodes in here as the actual near-death experience happened at the end of Wildfire, and then it continues into The Kiss. The victim of this near-death experience was James Murray. At the end of Wildfire, while taking care of some boxes at the end of the evacuation, a drive-by shooter comes by and shoots Kylie and James, and when Selena finds them, they are both in severely critical condition. When Nyla is told about the shooting, she is left speechless. Then Tim and Lucy see James get rolled into the hospital. He is sent straight to operation, very similar to Aaron Thorson's case. Due to Nolan knowing about the situation involving James and Kylie's kiss, however, Nyla is immediately made a suspect, and the majority of the episode is spent trying to clear her name. But while doing so, they find a lot of things, including a picture with Leonard Kelsey, an anti-police extremist. This ended up causing issues, as now the LAPD knows that James knowingly invited a prominent fugitive into his home underneath Nyla's nose. Luckily, they find out who the assailant was, and Nolan, Tim, and Lucy are able to apprehend apprehend him. Also, luckily, James is able to get out of the operation while being relatively okay. Obviously, he's still in crappy condition and continued to be for the next few episodes, but given that he was shot multiple times in the chest and was rushed into the ER Aaron Thorson style, it was a miracle that he survived. Next up, I'm going to talk about the season 3 finale and first episode of season 4, since I feel like I have to talk about this instance, even if the character wasn't physically about to die. We're talking about Angela Lopez getting smuggled to Guatemala by La Fiera to be used as a surrogate to her own child, while La Fiera would then take Angela's child and raise the child as her own, all while killing Angela after she gives birth. She has no way out of this situation on her own, and when she tries to give La Fiera some pushback, she drops the killer line.
But if you resist, Dr. Morales will put you into a twilight sleep and you will spend the next 3 months as an incubator and your life ends.
She knew that she was good as dead unless something happened. And that's when Wesley and the LAPD headed to Guatemala to help rescue her from La Fiera's grasp. It was a close call though, as in order to be saved, Angela had to go through forced labor to get everyone out of the house, as well as was getting continuously chased by La Fiera and her men. Without Wesley or the LAPD showing up to be able to get her out of there, she would have 100% died, and we would have never seen Angela Lopez again. Those are all of the notable times where characters almost died in The Rookie. There have been countless plot holes in The Rookie. Some of them are not so bad and can be overlooked, while others are so obvious that it sucks you out of the immersion. And today, we're going to go over as many plot holes in The Rookie as I could think of, while also trying to figure out what the show can do to fix them. Let's start off with one of the biggest ones I've noticed. Remember how Lucy wanted to go into undercover work, as well as how Nyla previously was in undercover work? If this is the case, how in the world are both of them able to participate in the documentary episodes? Not only are their faces broadcasted to the public, but their names are also broadcasted too. Some of the most notorious villains of the show are extremely intelligent, and they would know where to look to find these people's information. So in a more realistic scenario, the release of these documentaries would have been extremely dangerous to anyone wanting to go undercover. This is actually one of the plot holes in the show that you honestly can't fix, other than Lucy and Nyla not being in any of the documentaries. And it's clear that the show isn't going to do that. Next up, let's talk about how the season 1 rookies, Nolan, Lucy, and Jackson, were held to a much higher standard than rookies such as Aaron, Selena, and Miles. If the later rookies were held to the same standard as the original 3, all 3 of them would have been fired within their first week. But I also understand why they changed this, as it would have forced these characters to have similar personalities as the original rookies, and that's no fun. However, a good solution to this is to have these characters get super close to being fired before redeeming themselves in some way. Like when Selena did the aura thing on the car, it shouldn't have just gone away eventually just because she ended up being correct. She should have had to prove herself to stay on the job and to show that she learned her lesson. Another plot hole that really irks me personally is how these beat cops seemingly are able to do whatever they want. Lucy just decided one day that she wanted to go undercover. The entire crew flew to Guatemala to save Lopez like they're part of an international operations team. And the LAPD performs SWAT-level raids. None of this makes any sense when you compare it to real life, because beat cops wouldn't be fulfilling any of these roles. But I get it. You gotta make the show interesting, and it can't just be patrol all the time. But the solution to this is to show the process of each of these beat cops heading into each of these fields. They kind of do this with Lucy, but it's so fast-tracked that there's no way to keep up. I can't talk about major plot holes without mentioning the abhorrent consistency of the timeline. They didn't even try with this. The first 3 seasons spanned 13 months. Then season 4 is 18 months. Then from there, season 5 doesn't have any sort of specific time frame, but in season 6, it's supposedly 2024, and in season 7, it is 2025. Now, what's the big deal with this? It couldn't have caused that much of a problem. Wrong. We're going to look at the case of Selena Juarez and her training period. So if seasons 1, 2, and 3 take place between 2018 and 2019, and then season 4 is 2019 to maybe early 2021, that means season 5 started somewhere in the middle of 2021. This means that Selena is a rookie for 3 years by the time season 6 ends, and then she goes into 2025 still as a rookie. When you put it into perspective, the timeline is too hard to ignore. And how do you even fix it other than just making every season 1 year going forward? They've done it the last 2 seasons, so let's just hope they keep it that way. Here's one that you need to pay attention to in order to really understand, since it isn't all that significant. Remember how Lucy constantly mentions that she saved Tim on the first day of the job?
7 out of 19. Up or down?
Well, she didn't. She actually saved his life on the second day of the job. The shootout that happened in the pilot did not happen on her first day. That was the Tim test with the shop, the foreign guys, and all of that jazz. So why do they keep saying it was the first day? My guess is it's just to make things simpler, since it's easier to remember the pilot as the first day rather than the first few days. But it's still annoying. Remember how we were talking about beat cop responsibilities being unrealistic? Let's head back to something adjacent to that. How many serial killers and high-level cartel leaders are they going to encounter? How many of them are they going to have personal beef with? Oscar Hutchinson, Liam Glasser, Elijah Stone, Monica Stevens, Rosalind Dyer, and so many more. I get that Los Angeles is a massive place, but they are not meeting this many of them. Honestly, the show does too many of them. I'm looking at you, Monica. I hope you die super quickly into season 8. So the solution to this is to just slow down how many of them they encounter. It wouldn't even change that much, as I'm sure that Los Angeles still has a lot of murder. So instead of having serial killers, have a bunch of isolated murderers instead, and it would have a very similar flow. Next up, we're going to talk about Tim Bradford and Plain Clothes Day. In that episode where Lucy has hers, Tim mentions to her that he personally has washed out 11 rookies specifically on Plain Clothes Day. But how in the world could he have done that? He's not 60 years old and he hasn't been a TO for 30 years or something like that. So either he has had no successful rookies make it past their Plain Clothes Day, which says something about him, or he's exaggerating the number in order to scare her. Well, we find out that it's not the latter later in the episode, as he tells Gray that she's going to be the 12th rookie to wash out on Plain Clothes Day, and there would be no reason to mention the hyperbole if it wasn't actually true. I really would love to know what the reason for this is, and the only way to fix it is to clarify what his intention with this number actually is. Here's an interesting one. Remember how in season 3, Nolan went to college? Yeah, me neither, because they dropped it so quickly afterwards. They never explain if he passed or failed. And outside of season 3, there is zero mention of it. There was a 3-month time jump between season 4 episodes 1 and 2, but even after that, there was no mention of college at all. Honestly, it just comes down to this being a part of the show that the showrunners wanted people to forget, since it came from the forever infamous season 3. So early on into the show, Jackson was given so much crap for having public appearances with Sterling while they were dating. Like literally to the point where Lopez was thinking of washing him out. But then later on, they expected to do a whole bunch of posting on social media in order to promote the LAPD. Like, how does this make any sense at all? Not only that, but then Aaron Thorson, a super famous TikTok star that was in a reality show, is on the LAPD and it seems like he's only noticed a couple of times. Meanwhile, Jackson, who has had 1 or 2 red carpet appearances, has fangirls coming up to him while he's on patrol. They should have just taken the fangirl and Lopez part out entirely, because if they're gonna give Aaron so much spotlight without any fangirls of his own, it makes no sense for Jackson to have any either. Here's another one that didn't make any sense to me. Why was Talia so worried that she didn't put down her criminal brother on her paperwork when getting hired? They mentioned her not being hired if she did. Yet multiple other people in the LAPD have relatives who are criminals as well and join the LAPD just fine. Lopez has brothers that have priors, and this didn't stop her. Even Nolan had criminal family members as well. Granted, he didn't know about Pete at the time, so he wasn't written down, but his mother was a known criminal and he still made it, despite his age. Next up, I want to talk about something that bothers me more than it should. Percy West, Jackson's father and the person who runs internal affairs, just kind of disappears after Jackson's departure from the show. There is no mention anywhere in the show about why he stopped showing up, and then seemingly at random, he can just show up again. Just because Jackson isn't in the show anymore doesn't mean Percy can't be either. There was no closure or resolution to why he left before he randomly showed up again, and that infuriates me. The show needs to communicate stuff like this way better. In season 1, there was a lot of emphasis on everyone making sure that their shop was secured. It was mentioned multiple times throughout the season, and the rookies even have gotten chewed out for not doing so. But from season 2 onwards, there's just no mention of it, and it seems like they just dropped the rule. It's crazy how in later seasons of the show, they'll just leave the doors and windows wide open sometimes. They even show multiple points in the show later on of shops being stolen, like how Smitty's shop was stolen by a random guy in one episode, and then Mickey and the Hammer stole Selena and Nolan's shop in season 7, episode 7, The Mickey. Why even make this such a big deal in the first season if you're gonna drop it out of nowhere without any word of it whatsoever? Now I want to talk about the inconsistency of the character's ability to use a gun. Not just the LAPD, but also the people the LAPD are shooting at as well. How is someone like Tim Bradford, with all of these years of experience with handling a gun, not able to land a single shot for minutes at a time, especially when it counts the most? But then all of a sudden, he gets the ability of a seasoned sniper and lands one or more shots on a suspect perfectly. Like I said, everyone has this issue. It doesn't matter who. This isn't even adding the fact that seemingly every criminal in Los Angeles has a fully automatic weapon for some reason. That is also highly unrealistic and a big hole in my mind. Back to another timeline-related plot hole. Yippee! Let's talk about John Nolan's age. It jumps around a lot, and it doesn't correlate with anyone around him, even his son. The show mentions multiple times that John had Henry when he was 20 years old, but then they again say multiple times that Henry is 20 in the beginning of the show, but John is supposed to be 45 or 46 in these episodes. What's even crazier is Henry sometimes actually jumps back in age. During the first season, they mention he's 20 at first, then they say he's 19 later, then he gets engaged at 20 again. Then he's supposedly 21 near the end of the second season, but only 7 to 8 months have passed between seasons 1 and 2. So then Henry aged like a year and a half at that time, but apparently John is supposed to be 52 now. Though they like to mention pretty often that he's in his late 40s. I do not get it anymore. Also, jumping back a bit, we need to talk about a plot hole involving Aaron Thorson and Selena Juarez again. When Aaron was on his first week of the job, Aaron's mistakes were blamed on the academy and they corrected his mistakes. Yet when Nolan was training Selena, everyone blamed Nolan for Selena's bad stop. Yet when Aaron made a handful of mistakes, nobody batted an eye at the person training him. This never made sense to me. Really, the only way to fix this plot hole is to start treating every rookie equally. Miles was treated differently as they put all the blame on him, but he's only a rookie for the LAPD specifically, so that makes sense. Those are 15 plot holes in The Rookie and how we can fix some of them. There are over 25 characters who have only been in one episode of The Rookie, and today we're going to talk about every single one of them and their stories. Starting with Armando de Leon from Season 4, Episode 1, Life and Death, the gangster who was responsible for the murder of Officer Jackson West. In this episode, while trying to get Lopez back from La Figuera, the LAPD finds camera footage of Jackson getting shot in the back while trying to escape. At first, nobody knew who this assailant was, as they made a quick run for it. But after getting some DNA from Jackson's body, they found out that it was De Leon. Lieutenant Gray tracks him down, and while he tries to flee, he eventually surrenders. But he knew that Jackson wouldn't approve of this, and instead he arrested him. He then got charged for conspiracy and murder. Let's go back a season and talk about Katie Barnes from Season 3, Episode 11, New Blood, the ex-military who gave policing a try before she was ready. Barnes joined the LAPD right after leaving the army and was assigned to Tim Bradford. From the beginning, it was clear that she was still stuck in military mode, as she would call suspects enemies and being hostile towards one of them off the rip. Bradford treated her differently and gave her a more hands-on and gentle approach. Lucy was unhappy with this until Tim explained himself and how he handles his rookies.
Why are you being so nice to her?
Officer Barnes won't wear perfume because she's still worried it'll give away her position. And part of her is still waging a war in Afghanistan. You are a kind and insightful person. You see the good in people.
Eventually, Barnes realizes that policing isn't for her at this point in her life, and she resigns on her first day of patrol. On to a more recent character, we have Harrison Novak from Season 7, Episode 4, Darkness Falling. a serial killer whose reign ended after a car accident gave him away. In the episode, there was a multiple car accident on the highway, and while trying to find any evidence of someone being under the influence, they find a woman in the back of one of the cars, and they note that the car is Harrison Novak's. They raided his house and found pictures of all of Novak's victims. He knew that he was in some deep water, so he called Wesley, his previous lawyer, but he didn't know that Wesley moved to being a district attorney, and so Lopez and Harper were able to listen in. After trying to go out with a bang by trying to kill a sorority, and failing, he was arrested and he confessed to where he buried all of his victims. However, while doing so, they find out about bodies of another serial killer who would end up being identified as Liam Glasser. Now we have Bill August from Season 4, Episode 20, Nervo, a corrupt CIA agent who was responsible for the entire operation. The uncovering of his operation was all because of a Russian CIA operative named Ilya Sakharov, who fled to the US after being arrested for treason. He was also responsible for the kidnapping of Kate Hill, who was able to unravel August's operation. Eventually, Simone and Nolan track him down and they apprehend him. Moving on to Troy Hoffman from Season 5, Episode 12, Death Notice, the fake doctor who was out for the blood of Oscar Hutchinson. After hearing about how Oscar was donating a kidney to his daughter, Hoffman saw a chance to get revenge for the stabbing of his brother. However, he didn't know that the LAPD was keeping close guard of Oscar, so he had to come up with another plan. He captured the doctor's husband and son and told Dr. Bernard that Oscar had to die during surgery or her family would. However, he didn't play his alias well enough, as Selena caught on to it and identified him as Troy Hoffman. With the help of Nolan, they detain him. Hoffman remained smug though, saying that Oscar had to die or they would kill her family, and going there to save them would be too late. He was wrong about that though, because the LAPD did save them and Hoffman was arrested. Do any of you remember Beth Veston from Season 5, Episode 1, Double Down? She was the attorney of Rosalind Dyer, who was beaming from future prospects that she would get from representing her. But that was just a facade, as she actually was there to help Rosalind escape by pretending to be her and diverting the police, as Rosalind was wearing a blonde wig and got away in the opposite direction. While being interviewed, it's clear that she was too far gone, as she was cutting her arms on the table, and when they went over to check on her, they saw Rosalind's name in her arm. She tells them that people are going to die, and she was right, as we find out that Veston did this in exchange for Rosalind to kill her parents, and Rosalind does this. Veston is then arrested for her crimes afterwards. One of the wildest one-time character stories comes from Corey Harris from Season 3, Episode 7, True Crime. He was a former child actor who formed a religious group that starts with a C, calling himself Jedediah the Prophet, and he used young and impressionable students from his acting classes as his followers. While live streaming, someone breaks into his house, and while Corey tries to get away and hide while calling the police, the intruder does find him and kills him. What's crazy is the LAPD ended up finding pieces of Harris around the house, as the killer spread them around. And the eeriest part of all this, the live stream was still on, for all of his followers to watch. But let's talk about his ex-fiancée, Charlotte Luster, from the same episode. She was the co-star and childhood sweetheart of Corey Harris's character on Paul's Place, and they stayed in each other's lives for years after, dating and getting engaged in real life. About halfway through the episode though, she is suspected of the murder of Corey Harris, as they couldn't locate her after his death. However, it's later theorized that she was actually the one who was killed by Corey or his mother. Unfortunately, no evidence ever came up for this, and her death remains a mystery. Now we're headed to the present day, and we met a character recently that was long overdue, Ruth Harper, Nyla's mom from Season 7, Episode 17, Mutiny and the Bounty. We are finally introduced to her after she calls Nyla for help during a supposed burglary, but it actually was just her getting an eviction notice. Angela and Nyla dig around and find out that Ruth was a target of fraud, and they, along with Lopez's mom, work together to get the fraudster put behind bars. They catch the fraudster Priscilla in the act after Lopez's mom acts like another target. And at the end of the episode, we see Ruth going through a family album with Nyla, apologizing to her for being gullible, but Nyla assures her that it's just her seeing the best in people. Next, we're talking about Livy from Season 7, Episode 12, April Fools, the social media manager who sent the entire city into the purge. In the beginning of the episode, we find out about her because of the April Fool's jokes she was making on the LAPD's social media pages. These jokes were causing civilian confusion, and so Tim fired her and told her to leave. She decides to get back at them by posting that all crime is legal for 3 hours, and LA has its own purge. Property was destroyed, people were killed, and so much more. Eventually, after Livy calls the police for help, they save her, and then they arrest her for what she did. My favorite moment from her episode was this.
I really didn't think that anyone was going to take this seriously. I'm so sorry.
Let's jump to the next episode and talk about two people from the same episode, AJ Knox and Sean Larson from Season 7, Episode 13, 3 Billboards. AJ is a football star who used to play with Officer Penn in college, and Larson is AJ's friend and assistant. We meet AJ as he passes by the crime scene Miles is at, and they catch up. Then AJ offers Miles to come to his party that night, and he agrees. At the party, Sean Larson is stealing his jewelry, and we find out that AJ knows but doesn't care. But then something happened that would make him care. The next morning, they're all just hanging out and Sean offers smoothies to everyone. And while Penn declines, AJ and his bouncer accept. These smoothies were poisoned though, and we find out that Larson is an insider in the robbery of AJ's house. Penn saves AJ, and with the help of Lucy and Selena, they take down all the robbers and apprehend Sean Larson. At the end, Penn is offered $300,000 a year to be private security for AJ, and he respectfully declines. But Penn does score some season tickets from AJ for Tim, so that's nice. Let's take a trip back a few seasons before to talk about Claire Ivy from Season 4, Episode 2, 5 Minutes, the serial robber who has avoided getting arrested for years. While on patrol together, Lucy and Nolan meet her after pulling her over and finding out that she's a person of interest. This is because of many heists that they could never get her connected to. They let her on her way, but tell her that she's under supervision, so she should leave town. She tells them that she knows this song and dance, and tells them she has a plan and they'll never figure it out. And then she leaves. Nolan tried to keep tabs on her and stop her, but all of these efforts failed, and she got away. Her plan was to steal a bunch of jewelry from one of the trucks for the gala, and while she made her move, the LAPD managed to stop her. She tried to escape, but she was arrested and was hauled off to not be seen again. Now we're going to talk about Richard Dormer from Season 5, Episode 8, The Collar, the man behind the collars that would blow up after a slow 43 minutes. He broke into his sister's coworker's house and held her at gunpoint. Then he made her put on a collar and forced her to drive around while recording herself. Unfortunately, the LAPD couldn't save her in time, but they did find out about another one of Richard's victims, another company worker named Creighton Mitchell, who heard about the death and was terrified. Luckily, he got out of the car and removed the collar with shears, and that's when they found out about the timer. Lastly, they find the CEO with a collar on too, but Nolan and Selena go to save him. This is where Selena asks which wire to cut and Richard says blue. However, she knew that he was lying and told Nolan to cut the red one. This works, and Richard's plan fails. He is then taken into custody. These next two are a blast from the past, starting with Cecilia Olivo from Season 1, Episode 9, Standoff, the girlfriend of Marcus Vance. We are introduced to her while they're trying to take down Marcus, as they search her apartment and try to find him. They don't find him there, and Cecilia reveals that she is his girlfriend, but she didn't find out about his criminal activity until she got pregnant. That's when the shootouts begin, and the stress from them causes her water to break, and she starts going into labor with the help from Lucy. The baby is born during the shootout, but Vance breaks in wanting to take the baby. Luckily, Nolan and a team come save them and Vance is arrested. Cecilia is checked over, and she goes on with her life as normal with her brand new baby. The other early bird is Alex Montgomery from Season 1, Episode 8, Time of Death, Nolan's first kill. While on patrol, Nolan and Bishop find two robbers in a gas station, one being Alex. He makes a run for it, and Nolan follows him. Eventually, Alex runs into a random house and has a family put at gunpoint. He then runs upstairs, and before he can make an escape, Alex gets caught. Nolan warns him to drop the gun, but Alex whips around with the gun in his hand still pointed at Nolan. As soon as Nolan sees this, he has a gut reaction and shoots Alex, where he dies on the scene. This sends Nolan into a spiral, leading to the investigation that temporarily paused his career. Up next on our list, we got Tom Bradford from Season 4, Episode 9, Breakdown, the abusive father of Tim Bradford. Technically, he was mentioned in the episode before, where Jennifer, Lucy, and Tim talked about Tom and his past with Tim. It's revealed that Tom is in hospice, slowly dying. While Jennifer forgave him, Tim did not. But in the next episode, we actually see him when Tim pays a visit to him due to an old case involving a family friend, Monica Okoa, whose husband was murdered. Tim confronts Tom with this, and Tom reveals that he murdered Frank and staged it, since Tom and Monica were having an affair, and he helped Monica cover up the loose ends. Tim arrested Monica and then came back. And instead of arresting him, he gives Tom a piece of his mind and then leaves him to die a slow and painful death. A few episodes later, we meet Jane Becker from Season 4, Episode 15, Hit List. She starts out working with another assassin to take out jurors who were on the Kellen Meyer case. We'll get back to him later though. But while on the job, she runs into Lieutenant Gray at a parking garage. She tries to distract him at first, but he sees her weapon. She then tries to kill him, and while she did seriously injure him, she couldn't get the job done, as he was able to retaliate and she was shot in the chest. And while paramedics do come for both of them and they were taken to the hospital, she ended up passing away. This next name might make some of you shiver. Cole Midas from Season 1, Episode 16, Greenlight, the son of a major gang leader who ended the life of Captain Anderson. He was introduced as the son of Leonard Midas, leader of the Southern Front, but also the baby daddy of a woman that Nolan arrested earlier and accidentally ripped her dress. He was infuriated with this and put a green light on him. After a while Nolan and Anderson were on a call, Cole ambushed them and tied them to chairs next to a swimming pool. After some back and forth, Cole pushes Anderson in, and while she escapes this, Cole shoots her while escaping himself, and this shot ends up killing her. He knew he was cooked after this, so he tried to flee the city, but his dad gave up his location and he was promptly arrested by Nolan, with guns pointed all around him. He was then later charged for kidnapping and the murder of Captain Zoe Anderson. Moving on from Cole, we get to Jerry McGrady from Season 4, Episode 6, Poetic Justice, an older cop who just wasn't ready to retire. Gray wanted McGrady to retire, and he appointed Tim to make it happen. So Tim asks McGrady if he wants to come along for a ride along. Initially, Tim just wanted to use this as a way to convince him to retire, but then a case came up and McGrady had a connection to it because of a friend who died long ago. They find the gold and stop a criminal who was trying to get it. After this case, McGrady decides that this is a great way to end his career, and he retired on his own after almost 44 years of service. Now we're heading to one of the documentary episodes with Lisa Miller from Season 5, Episode 18, Double Trouble, the best friend of Sava and the affair partner of Jake. In the beginning of the episode, when Jake is released from prison, Sava and Lisa are there to greet him. But later on, Jake is found dead in a dumpster. After a bit of digging, the LAPD find out that Jake and Lisa were having an affair, and Lisa wanted Jake all to himself. For some reason, I don't know what she saw in him, but that's besides the point. But Lisa couldn't handle that Jake was with Sava, and so she tried to run both of them off the road. She failed at this though, so she ends up killing Jake by just shooting him in the head instead. When Lisa was confronted by the LAPD, she shot Nolan, but because of his vest, he ended up being okay. Lisa was then arrested for the murder of Jake and the attempted murder of Nolan. Next up, we got Mrs. Mitchelson from Season 5, Episode 7, Crossfire, the woman who had a lot to hide from the LAPD. She was introduced when Nolan and Selena told her about the death of Alvin, her husband. They found out that Alvin was a con artist who caused a lot of deaths, and he would have ended up in prison very soon if it wasn't for the people going for the kill before that. After some more work, the LAPD found out that Alvin was actually poisoned, and that's what caused his death. After interviewing Mrs. Mitchelson, she came clean about doing it because him going to prison wasn't going to give her his life insurance. She then was apprehended and we haven't seen her again. Let's circle back to Kellen Myers from Season 4, Episode 15, Hit List, the corrupt court officer who sold the list of jurors. The LAPD figured out about Myers after a raid, and he was brought in and interrogated by Lopez. He initially denied that he was ever involved, and he was going to plead the fifth. But Lopez tells him that she knows about the list that he provided, and that they saw that he was paid off by Rubio after looking through his finances. After all of this, he did confess, but he also assured them that he had no idea that people were going to die. He thought it was just going to be used to scare people off. Byers was then arrested for accessory to the murders. Let's head to the finale of Season 4 with Gabrielle Navarre. In Season 4, Episode 22, Day in the Hole, the officer from the border. After Nolan was transferred to the Frontera Police Department for a week, he meets Gabrielle, who really needed help since the chief was absent. We don't see much of her until near the end of the episode when everyone is battling the group of criminals that come in. Afterwards, they arrested everyone, and Gabrielle thanked Nolan and the others for the help. Then Nolan went back to LA and never went back. And now to talk about the most recent one-time character, Rena Davitt from Season 7, Episode 18, The Good, the Bad, and the Oscar. The woman that Penn went on a date with. Penn matches with her on a dating site and they meet at a restaurant. Things seem like they're going well until Penn notices the 7 on her necklace. He leaves the table to call Selena, where she finds out that she's associated with the Eastern Front, and he makes a run for it. The Eastern Front starts to go after him, and he pushes her out of the way while he makes his exit. While the gang keeps going after him, Rena doesn't, and we never get to see what happened to her after, but it's likely that she got arrested along with the rest of them. There are many episodes of The Rookie that everyone can agree are some of the best episodes in the entire show. But on the flip side, there's also quite a few episodes that everyone can agree are some of the worst. And today, we're going to talk about the most loved episodes of The Rookie, as well as talk about the most hated episodes. We are going to start with the most loved episode of Season 1, with Season 1, Episode 16, Green Light, which is also one of the most influential episodes of the entire show's history. This episode actually isn't anything special in the beginning, but then the action starts when Nolan and Bishop take a call about a valet destroying a lady's car. The valet then makes a comment about the lady and she attacks him. But when Nolan attempts to apprehend her, her dress gets ripped, and she is not happy about this. Later, it's revealed that this lady is the girlfriend of Cole Midas, the son of the leader of the Southern Front, which is one of the most influential and powerful gangs in Los Angeles. Cole decides to put a green light on Officer Nolan, and the LAPD does not like this. They decide to shut down a bunch of the Southern Front's operations in order to get Leonard Midas to drop the green light. But then Nolan and Captain Anderson are captured by Cole while on patrol. He proceeds to taunt Anderson and tase her repeatedly, then pushes her into the pool. And when she escapes and goes after Cole, he shoots at her and kills her as he escapes. And just like that, one of the most important characters of the show was killed off forever. The fans universally love this episode because of how emotionally impactful it is, as well as how much it changes Nolan. Her death motivates him to be the best cop he can be, and he has proved that over the span of the show. And while fans miss Anderson, it's also understood that this was a need for Nolan's character development. Now let's talk about the most hated episode of Season 1, which was pretty tough because there really isn't a universally hated episode in the first season. But I've seen people say that Season 1, Episode 13, Caught Stealing, is one of the most boring episodes in the entire show. This episode starts off with Nolan and Bishop responding to a car accident that involves a stabbing victim, but the guy decides to run away before he can get medical help. However, later in the episode, he shows up again and is revealed to be an undercover officer getting ready to raid a drug cartel operation. The LAPD raid this operation that night and are now in charge of $1 million. The rookies are then put in charge of the money until the money counters can get there. But after the counters do their thing, they realize that there's $250,000 missing. Obviously, the rookies are questioned first and then are cleared of it, but the cartel goes after Lucy later in the day, thinking that she was the one that took the money. But then Lucy remembers that it's actually one of the guys who did it and betrayed the cartel, which allows her to take him down. As I said earlier, this one isn't exactly hated, but it's the most hated of the season for being the most boring episode of the season. And honestly, one of the more boring episodes of the whole show. It's never really talked about because fans tend to forget about this episode's existence, and that's for good reason. Let's move on to Season 2. And the most loved episode of Season 2 is Episode 11, Day of Death. I feel like I talk about this episode a crap ton, but it's honestly for a good reason, because this episode is just that good. This episode is the one that takes place after Lucy Chen is kidnapped by Caleb Wright and taken to a house in the middle of nowhere, where he tattoos her day of death to her body and plans to put her into a barrel where she will suffocate to death. This isn't his first time, and he's tied to the notorious serial killer Rosalind Dyer. Lucy attempts to make an escape when he has his guard down, but she doesn't succeed, and he decides to bury the barrel underground to make the suffocation take much less time, as well as so the LAPD can't find her when they inevitably find him. But joke's on him because she leaves a ring outside to identify where she was buried, and Tim finds it. They unbury her, and she is taken to the hospital to be treated. This episode is loved for a very obvious reason: the suspense. Watching her slowly lose hope, as well as watching the LAPD in a hurried panic trying to find her, especially after killing Caleb before they can find out where she is some of the most riveting storytelling in the entire show. It also helps that this plotline is centered around Lucy Chen, one of the most loved characters. Moving on to our next hated episode, and I couldn't find a hated episode for season 2, so we're just going to talk about the second most hated episode of season 3 instead. We're going to talk about season 3, episode 2, Injustice, which is the introductory episode to Doug Stanton. This episode was also the introduction of James Murray, a character that people still hate to this day so many years later. While this is Doug's first episode, we also see his racist side for the first time. Jackson and Doug were on a call about a burglary when he starts to stereotype the kid out of nowhere, talking about the kid being in a gang or owing money to somebody. Jackson was then forced to defuse the situation. Then we get to James's first appearance, which fans didn't like either. He was first introduced when a man was being arrested by the LAPD in front of a padlocked park. James was filming the whole interaction and instigating the police the whole time. Then later in the episode, when Nolan tried to do a good thing by fixing the lights in the park, James calls him a white savior and gets super confrontational. Both Doug and James are the reason why this episode is hated so much. The fans thought that the wrong message was being sent with this episode, as the episode was meant to shed light on issues such as racism and discrimination, but instead it dramatized those issues and ended up not appealing to anybody. Let's talk about the most loved episode of season 3, which is season 3, episode 14, Threshold. There are a few things happening in this episode. One part of the episode is Lucy Chen's undercover investigation, as well as everyone trying to help Lopez plan her new wedding after her previous wedding venue is seized by the FBI. One of the biggest things with this operation that Lucy had was that there was no one there to help her. She was completely on her own. The operation was that she had to cook, which has a few complications. Number 1, she had to make the product correctly to not blow her cover, while also number 2, not letting this product hit the streets. She is taken from the motel room without her phone, but she sneaks a gun after they take hers. Meanwhile, on the wedding front, Tamara and Silas are enlisted to help, and most of that plotline is spent planning. On the way to cook, Tim pulls her over, and this allows the LAPD to keep an eye on her. She starts cooking, but the number 2 complication starts to come into play, and Tim and Nyla have to get her out of there. Luckily, they made it in time, and she's taken out of the situation while successfully busting the operation. Then comes the wedding, which seems like it's going well until Lopez and Jackson are captured by La Fiera, and that's how the episode ends. People love this episode because it's one of the better cliffhangers in the show, as well as the wedding planning was a great way to break the suspense with something fun. Not many episodes of the show have such blatant switching from fun to serious, as it's usually one or the other, but this episode did it so well. Now, for the most hated episode of season 3, we have season 3, episode 7, True Crime. And this is probably one of the most infamous episodes in the entire show. This was the first ever documentary episode in the show's history, and fans were not having it once it was released. This was the documentary episode about Corey Harris and his celebrity religious group, as well as the LAPD's perspective of the case. The story is told through the eyes of the officers being interviewed, and we get some other interesting information throughout the episode as well, such as how this ties back to season 2's episode Fallout. The 5 people on the top of the building chanting about Jebediah were members of this religious group, and Corey was filming this entire situation. This episode is hated for many reasons. Number 1, it's a documentary episode. Number 2, it's the first documentary episode. The fans were not only confused, but also very uninterested in this style of episode. And it's interesting how the show went on to do this 3 more times after this. Number 3, even compared to some of the other documentary episodes, the story just wasn't interesting or compelling. Overall, it's very clear on why this episode is one of the most hated in the entire show. It's time to move on to season 4, and the most loved episode of this season is tied between 2 episodes. So I'm going to go with the one that I talk about less often, and that is season 4, episode 22, Day in the Hole. This was the episode that was about preparing for Tim and Lucy's undercover operation, as well as Nolan's day in the middle of nowhere. This episode starts with Nolan and Bailey arriving in Frontera where they meet Officer Navarra, the person that Nolan is helping for the week. Then it switches back to LA where they discover Jake, Tim's doppelganger, as well as later in the episode, they learn about Sava, who is Lucy's doppelganger. The plan is then set in motion. They will go undercover as Jake and Sava in order to bust Roy Hijack and his operation. Back to Nolan's side, Nolan makes an arrest that makes some others not very happy. And so these others make their way to Frontera and it's a shootout between Nolan, Navarre, Bailey, and Elroy versus this group of men. Luckily, the Frontera side wins and everything is settled. Even Elroy got some action. But one of the biggest parts in this episode, and it's why it's loved so much, is Tim and Lucy's practice run at trying to be a couple. That's not the only reason people like this episode though. It's the perfect blend between a serious operation and something ridiculous. The doppelganger plot is some of the best work the show has done with walking right on the line between comedy and a serious plot. Moving on to the most hated episode of season 4. This one is a very similar case to the last hated episode, with season 4, episode 16, Real Crime. This was the documentary episode that shed light on the Aaron Thorson case that the show had been slowly revealing information about over the span of the 4th season. But with this documentary episode, the real story of Aaron Thorson is publicized to the masses. Similar interviews to true crime are also present in this episode. And with this documentary out there, Aaron's reputation is rebranded and he can live peacefully knowing that his story, the truth, is now in the spotlight, and he doesn't have to live with the negative press anymore. This episode is hated for a very similar reason to the last one. It's another documentary. People didn't like the first one, and they were not much happier with this one. Luckily for this episode, it's typically rated as the best documentary episode. But that's not saying much when the 4 lowest rated episodes of the entire show are just the documentary episodes. What makes this one even worse is that they tarnished this amazing storyline they were building up that was based on a true story by making it into one of these episodes. Moving on to season 5. We have season 5, episode 1, Double Down, as the most loved episode of the season. This episode is the one where Tim and Lucy actually go undercover to take down Roy's operation, as Day in the Hole was just the preparation. They are dressed up as Jake and Sava and are escorted on a private jet all the way to Vegas. During this entire situation, they really have to play the roles of Jake and Sava, who are very handsy and affectionate towards one another. So, Tim and Lucy also are handsy and affectionate towards one another. This starts to create doubt in their professional relationship, but before they can discuss anything too deeply, their cover is blown, and a fight begins. Luckily, Lucy and Tim win, and the operation is blown. This also was the episode where Rosalind Dyer made her big escape after her trial for the Caleb Wright murders. The LAPD do everything they can to try and find her, but they are too late, as 3 people end up dead before they even knew where she was. This episode is loved for many of the same reasons as Day in the Hole was. The Chenford moments, the comedy of the operation as a whole, as well as Rosalind is one of the most loved villains in the show, so having her back was a treat to the audience. Let's move to the most hated episode of season 5, which is episode 18, Double Trouble, which unfortunately not even Jake and Sava could save. I feel like a broken record, so I'm going to summarize this one more concisely. It's another documentary episode, and this one's about Jake going missing and the affair between him and Lisa, Sava's good friend. The same interviews happen, we hear the story, you get the point. People just hate it because it's another documentary episode. Let's move on. Season 6 was pretty difficult to find a loved episode for, since this season was writer's strike. But I think out of all of them, Season 6, Episode 8, Punch Card, is the episode that people enjoy more than all the others. This episode follows more on the overarching Monica Stevens plotline that has been building up over the last dozen or so episodes. The episode starts with Monica's house getting broken into. She beats the guy and then beats herself up a little to make it look even worse. Then we get to the hospital where Monica and her assailant are, when all of the injured guys from the Eastern Front come in and have to be admitted. Monica takes this time that she's still in the hospital in order to kill her assailant by putting a shot into his vitals. Going back a little though, we have the Metro operation. But this goes wrong after there was a breach in confidentiality, and Tim and Aaron have to figure out what happened, during which there's a shootout that happened between Nolan and the Eastern Front. But through the compromise of the Metro operation, that's how Blair London's therapy operation was found out. Overall, this episode is a breath of fresh air in a sea of a very mediocre season overall. And that's what makes this the most loved episode of the season, even if it isn't one of the best in the show's history. The most hated episode of Season 6 is Season 6, Episode 10, Escape Plan. This episode has a lot going on, so strap in. The LAPD finally are able to connect Monica to Blair London's therapy operation and start digging further into that. Meanwhile, Monica makes a deal with Oscar Hutchinson and Jason Weiler to get out of jail by getting some information from someone on the inside. Then, Monica uses this information to make a few deals, one of which is hiring a hit squad to go after the person who sent the assailant after her in Punch Card. Unfortunately for her, Lucy was undercover as a babysitter for the person that she went to, and she overhears everything. Later, Blair London is captured by Monica and is taken on a flight out of the country. Luckily, Charlie informs Lopez of this, so then they're able to track down where they're going. While Nolan, Harper, and the FBI are on their tail, Lucy, Tim, and the rest of the LAPD have their own fight, and it's pretty badass. We are then taken to Argentina, where Monica is handing off Blair London, but Nolan can't just watch and goes in to save her, followed by Harper. And while Monica manages to escape, Blair is rescued. This episode is hated by the audience mainly because of how insanely unrealistic this whole thing is. Why are patrol officers going to Argentina to save somebody? Not even the FBI would do this in most cases. Not only that, but Monica's power is completely overblown by this point, and she's starting to overstay her welcome. Overall, this is not a great way to end the season. Finally, with Season 7's most loved episode, we have Season 7, Episode 6, The Gala. This episode starts with revealing that it's Valentine's Day, and there's an LAPD Valentine's Day Gala. Tim's sister Jennifer wants help dating again and wants in on the gala to meet some handsome cops. Before the gala though, Tim and Lucy are in charge of Turn In Your Ex Day, a way to get some confessions from some vengeful ex-lovers. Meanwhile, Nolan and Selena are on the case to find a woman named Claudia after she disappeared the week prior, and neither her dad or anyone else has been able to contact her. They start with talking to Anton Petrovich, and from there, they discover the secret love affair between Claudia and Anton's daughter Mila. We'll come back to this later. The gala happens and everything goes wrong. Bailey and Nolan are fighting about the Malvado situation. Tim gets into drama with Anita's partner. Chenford accidentally hook up. Wait a second, most people wouldn't say that's wrong. Anyways, the next day, Claudia is found at Anton's penthouse, and Nolan and Selena are able to save her and Mila, with the help of Claudia's father, of course. This episode is one of the most heartwarming and impactful episodes of the 7th season, and fans ate it up. Not just with the Chenford hookup, but also the Claudia plotline was one that people praised for how it was handled. Overall, it's easy to see why people love this episode. Now for the most hated episode of Season 7. We have Season 7, Episode 15, A Deadly Secret. And again, I'll try to make it brief. This is the documentary episode about Abigail's documentary involving Westview, as well as everything that went wrong with it. Her getting trapped inside, getting involved with Liam Glasser, the failed movies that came before it, and so much more. A Deadly Secret is the most hated episode of the show for quite a few reasons. Number one, this is the worst of the worst. The worst documentary episode. Number two, this episode ruined Abigail's character, which they didn't need to do since she hadn't been seen in 4 seasons by this point. And number 3, this was at a time where the showrunners were still teasing the audience about Chenford without giving them any actual substance. And by this point, fans were getting really tired of the cat and mouse game. Overall, it's not hard to see why this is the most hated episode of season 7 and the entire show. That is the most loved and most hated episodes of The Rookie. There have been multiple cast members of The Rookie who have left the show and are no longer around. Some of them only lasted one season, whereas others left after a multiple season run. And in this video, we are going to talk about every cast member who left, their story, and why they left the show. The first cast member to ever leave the show on their own terms was Afton Williamson, the actress for Talia Bishop. Afton joined the show at the beginning of its run, starting in the pilot episode. She was in every single episode of the first season. But then when the second season started, she was never to be seen again. People wondered where she went and why she disappeared seemingly at random. The show never put out a statement on why she left. They only said that she quit the LAPD and moved to being a special agent. This was after the information involving her foster brother started to come out, where her foster brother was a convicted felon. She left him off the list of her siblings on her LAPD application, because if you're a part of the LAPD, you can't have any felon family members. But behind the scenes, the reason, or should I say reasons, that Afton Williamson left the show were a lot more complicated. On August 4th, 2019, a month and a half before the second season premiered, she put out a post on Instagram that told everybody why she was leaving the show and would never return. And the reasons that she gave really put the show, its crew, and its cast on blast. The post starts with, "I will not be returning for season 2 of The Rookie. I owe it to you, my amazing fans, to share the truth." She then cites her first reason for leaving, which was that she felt that she was discriminated against because of her race. "I experienced racial discrimination / racially charged inappropriate comments from the hair department and bullying from executive producers." She expanded on this later down in the post, and the racist commentary and bullying from the hair department head, Sally Siganovich, escalated into sexual assault at our rap party. Afton said that even though all of this was reported to the showrunner, the incident remained undocumented and was not brought to HR, even though he promised that it would. According to her, Siganovich was fired, but this was after an entire year of Afton having to deal with the racially charged language while in the trailers. Continuing on to her next point, she laid out a very heavy accusation against one of her co-stars, Demetrius Gross, the actor for Detective Wolf. It continued along with sexual harassment from a recurring guest star, Demetrius Gross. She goes further into it later on, stating, "After my initial reports of sexual harassment, I was assured that Gross would be fired. However, Afton claims that she was asked to film scenes with him the very next day, despite them not starting on those episodes, which meant that they had time to switch things around. But then, at the end of the season, she saw Gross's name on the call sheet, and this is where Alexi admitted that he was not fired and that HR wasn't ever even involved. In the post, she says that she was asked to return this season and promised that everything was handled. The problem was that season 2 already started filming, and the investigation hadn't even started. She knew that this is going to be an ongoing issue, and so she quit right then and there, and she was never seen on the show again. Obviously, when these accusations came out, the entire Rookie fanbase was shocked. This info going public also brought in a few law firms to investigate what happened. During the investigation, they conducted 400 hours of interviews and went through days worth of footage to find evidence of this. Unfortunately for Afton, the allegations she made didn't have any evidence, and therefore nothing was going to happen. She was heartbroken by this and claimed that the producers covered up the truth. To this day, we'll never know if the accusations were true or false, as just because there was no evidence doesn't exactly mean some of what she said wasn't actually true. She hasn't posted on social media in over 5 years now and hasn't acted since, and I hope that she's doing well now. Moving on to our next actor who voluntarily left the show, Titus Mackin Jr., the actor for Jackson West. I've talked about his story in previous videos, but I've never went really in depth into the specifics of things, so that's what we're going to do now. Titus was also on the show from the beginning with the pilot, but the difference between him and Afton was that he went on past the first season, as he was in the entirety of the first 3 seasons of the show before he decided to part ways. However, their reasons for leaving are not exactly entirely different. This next part is going to go over a lot of American politics. Let's go back to early 2020. The The BLM movement started to gain momentum due to the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor going viral online. These two were just mere examples of the many individuals who were being killed by police officers at the time. But these two going viral lit a spark into the movement and turned this topic into a mainstream talking point, especially with everyone being at home and constantly being online. There was no hiding from the fact that this was a serious issue, and for a cop show like The Rookie, it was almost guaranteed that they were going to have to tackle it eventually, especially with season 2 airing during the rise of the movement. Titus started to become concerned about if he could continue playing his part in the show, being a black man himself. He felt that it was a moral conflict, and he was going to leave the show right then and there, but the showrunners didn't want him to leave. They begged him to continue doing the show, and this is when a negotiation type thing started to begin. Titus, alongside Richard T. Jones, the actor for Lieutenant Gray, went to the showrunners with a request that they cover racial discrimination and police brutality in the show, and the show agreed to do so. But Titus decided that he wanted more than just a plot. The entire third season needed to center around this, and Titus said that if they did this, he would continue to play Jackson in the show for future seasons. As the show didn't want to lose another one of their main cast, they agreed to this. Season 3 then started to air, and the biggest plot line of the season was about Jackson's new training officer, Doug Stanton, played by Brandon Routh. This new training officer was written to be an overly racist cop who had a prejudice against black citizens. This would put Jackson in danger throughout the episodes and put him in a moral dilemma, similar to the one that he was dealing with in real life. After an incident where Wes was badly beaten by several criminals and Stanton just sat and watched, Stanton was put on leave and transferred to another department. This would not save Stanton though, as Wes would then go to that department and show them the same footage. That was the main story involving race in the third season, but this wasn't the only one. The show leaned into the movement throughout the entire rest of the season, as new elements were introduced, such as the character of James Murray. This season was extremely controversial during its airing, as people believed the themes were too over the top and in the face of the viewers. But the show was ready to get back to how they previously wrote it, and they were starting to write for season 4. However, Titus thought about it for a while and decided that the show still didn't do enough to keep him on the show. So he went to the showrunners and told them that he was going to be leaving anyways. This caused the writers to have to go back and write him out of everything, as well as give his character an extremely unsatisfying exit. A 10-second scene where Jackson is shot in the back by La Fiera's crew. What's even worse is that this was a stunt double and not Titus playing Jackson, as he left before they could record a proper send-off. This made fans upset, since they thought he could have at least just returned for a better ending to his character. After The Rookie, Titus took a long break from acting, and he started focusing on his music career. He did make an attempt to return to acting, however, looking at his IMDb page, it shows that he has not been in many projects since his departure, showing he's only been in one project in the last 3 years. His music career unfortunately shows similar results, as looking at his YouTube page for his music, his top song has 109,000 views, where all of the others are under 100,000. So unfortunately, it looks like Titus's career took a massive hit overall after his departure from the show. Now we head on to the first actor who left the show where it wasn't entirely his decision. True Valentino, the actor for Aaron Thorson. Aaron was introduced in Season 4, Episode 2, 5 Minutes as a new rookie, and he was a recurring character for the rest of Season 4 and became a main character for the entire 5th and 6th seasons. However, when teasers of Season 7 started dropping, fans were noticing that Aaron wasn't in any of them. People became concerned that Aaron was being kicked off from the show, and unfortunately, their suspicions were correct. Aaron Thorson was not going to return for the 7th season. True went on his Instagram story on August 9th, 2024, and talked vaguely about his departure, saying that it was such an amazing opportunity and that he felt so lucky to have had the last 3 seasons, thanking the fans for being the best. What had people very confused though was the end. You never know who may pop back up in the Mid-Wilshire precinct. Until then, 7 Adam 19, this is Aaron Thorson over and out. This told people that unlike Jackson a few seasons earlier, Aaron wasn't going to be killed off, and that there may be something more to the story. Later on, Alexi Hawley came out and explained why Aaron Thorson wasn't returning. He said that it was for creative reasons, and that he believed that Aaron's story had come to an end. but he did tell us that the door was open for True to come back and play as Aaron again in the future. True Valentino is a great actor, and he was a huge part of our show for several seasons, and we'd love to have him back in some capacity. He also confirmed that he was still alive in the Rookie universe. When season 7 started, we found out that Aaron transferred to North Hollywood. Unfortunately, as of right now, we still have no idea if True will ever come back to be Aaron, and that disappoints me a lot personally, because Aaron is and always will be my favorite character in the show. Hopefully what they said about the door being open is true and we can see him again one day. Now to talk about Mercedes Mason, the actress for Captain Zoe Anderson. She also wasn't around for very long, as she was only around for the first 16 episodes of the show before her sudden death in season 1 episode 16, Greenlight. This episode is consistently praised as one of the best episodes in the show, but despite that, fans still don't understand why she was killed off in the first place. Not only was it so early into the show, but it was also abrupt. Just the episode before, there was no indication that she would have been permanently killed off. And then the next, she's gone, just like that. Interestingly, Mercedes never actually spoke out about why she left the Rookie. The most she ever did was live tweet during the episode, "I just want to say thank you guys for being supportive of the show and me." However, there was clearly no bad blood, given that she returned for a flashback scene involving Nolan, Lucy, and Jackson graduating from the academy. But the question still remained, why? Alexi Hawley came out after the episode aired about the reason, where he revealed that it wasn't always the plan that she was going to be killed off. We went back and forth about it in the writer's room, but it unfortunately felt like the most dramatic and powerful way to impact our story. It's heartbreaking, but the stakes of this new life Nolan has chosen are all too real, and we can't run away from them creatively. So the reason for her departure was purely for creative reasons, and they wanted to impact Nolan as much as possible early on, as at this point of the show, he is still considered the central character. Or that's what everyone thought was the reason that she left. She also left the show because of her newborn baby. In an Instagram post that she made on May 12, 2020, over a year after her departure, she talks about her experience on the show while dealing with this newborn baby. "I was on set of The Rookie and could barely keep my eyes open or remember my lines. Leaked through shirts due to milk production. Hated myself and felt guilty for leaving Chaos even for a moment." So while this was not initially shared by either Mercedes nor the show, we later found out that this was another reason that her departure came so early. Those were the 4 cast members to leave the show and why they left. In this video, I'll be telling you 107 more facts about anything and all things The Rookie. Sit back and enjoy. Starting off with the main character, John Nolan, played by actor Nathan Fillion, who is a hugely successful actor with a wide filmography. Because of this, he was honored with an area in Edmonton, Canada, that was named the Nathan Fillion Civilian Pavilion. The origins of this came from radio personality Lauren Hunter's petition in 2019 to build a small building downtown that was named after the actor. The petition amassed over 37,000 signatures, including Fillion's other castmate John Cena and Margot Robbie. In May 2024, Nathan Fillion visited the parklet named after him and posted his reaction to Instagram. In addition to the 3 Canadian main actors, several recurring actors are also from Canada. This includes Brandon J. McLaren, who plays Elijah Stone, and Curry Graham, who plays Nolan's friend Ben McGree. Before The Rookie started, Richard T. Jones, who plays Lieutenant Gray, and Nathan Fillion both appeared on Santa Clarita Diet. Jones also plays a police officer on that show named Rick, while Fillion plays a zombie named Gary West, who was subsequently recast after Nathan Fillion left, due to scheduling issues as Fillion chose to prioritize his role in The Rookie. Prior to shooting season 1, the cast was put through a rapid version of police academy training for 2 weeks, during which they were taught how to shoot, drive, clear rooms, and handcuff, among a bunch of other things. Before shooting any subsequent season, the cast would have a quick refresher on all of these skills. Alexi Hawley considers the show a character show masquerading as a cop show. This is because the show differs from other cop shows, as the show aims to focus more on the relationship of the characters rather than exclusively being a crime of the week show. Hawley also considers the theme of the whole show to be second chances. This theme is very evident in many of the characters, especially Nolan and Harper. Nolan's storyline focuses on his second chance with his professional life as he ventures into a new career, while Harper's explores her getting a second chance in her personal life as she reconnects with her daughter and eventually grows a new family with James Murray. Despite being the creator of the show, Alexi Hawley only made his debut as a director in the season 4 finale Day in the Hole. Nathan Fillion and Eric Winter both started their acting careers in soap operas. Fillion starred in One Life to Live as Joey Buchanan in 1994, while Winter played Rex Brady from 2002 to 2005. Despite already having one unsuccessful spin-off, Eric Winter, who plays Tim Bradford, has expressed further desire for more spin-offs. Eric goes on to say, "It would be fun to see what they have in store. If they actually spin off a character from the original, or if they just bring in somebody new. I don't know, but I think another spin-off could be a lot of fun, and I hope it does happen to build the universe." Luckily for Eric, it was reported on December 5th, 2024, that a second spin-off of the show would be developed. According to a Variety article, the show will be set in Washington, and it will follow a male cop who is stepping into a new phase of life in his second act. The show's theme song is called Kings and Queens by Chen. The title card of the show is known to change depending on the tone of the episode. For example, in the 100th episode, a section of letters in the word rookie were illuminated to reveal 100. In the roll call room, the windows have hinges in the middle, and the windows are tilted to avoid showing the crew members in the reflection. The show uses many real-life police techniques. For example, in Season 5, Episode 10, The List, when James and Nyla are caught in a bank robbery, Nyla explains how to describe a suspect using the acronym GROUT.
I need you to say the word grout. Gender, race, over, under, task.
Male, white, black jacket, dark pants, and his task, killing us.
The show has a lot of continuity issues, with one of them being the look of the briefing room. For example, the board in the briefing room changed from a whiteboard in Season 1 to a blackboard in Season 2. Additionally, the show has some factual issues as well. For example, in both Lopez and Harper's pregnancy storylines, both characters worked their regular duty while they were pregnant. However, in real life, female officers are often assigned to desk duty when pregnant and would never be allowed to work full duty. When Nolan is asked if becoming a cop was his plan B, he says more like plan D, astronaut, construction, then cop. The astronaut line is a reference from Nathan Fillion's role as Captain Malcolm Reynolds in the show Firefly. Some of the show's storylines have been inspired by real-life events. For example, in Season 7, Episode 16, The Return, it features an influencer who crashes a speeding car into a reservoir while live streaming. This plotline was inspired by influencer Jack Doherty, who has a history of filming himself being a public nuisance. About 6 months before the episode aired, Doherty had crashed a sports car while live streaming. Due to laws surrounding the impersonation of emergency vehicles, the police cars are detailed on the side with the words "to serve and protect" to distinguish them from actual police cars. Lopez actually could have had a completely different career. She attended engineering classes in college, but decided to drop out because she realized that she just didn't like it. The cast have called Richard T. Jones the biggest prankster on set. In the episode entitled Real Crime, a photo of Lieutenant Gray as a rookie is shown. However, this photo is actually a promotional photo from a different project, where Richard played Sergeant Jonah Cole, an NYPD officer. Lieutenant Gray is believed to be descended from the famous Haitian liberator Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Despite being comedic relief, the character Smitty is fairly realistic to a lot of stations, especially as the character is a cop who only wants to do low-stake jobs and rarely fires their weapon. Over the course of the show, some funny and interesting facts have been revealed about Smitty. For example, he is the leader of the QAnon movement, with his alias being Q. Brent Huff, who plays Officer Smitty, has made the most appearances of any guest character. Out of 126 episodes, Smitty has appeared in 53 of them. On the other side of the spectrum, Katie O'Brien played new rookie Katie Barnes in one episode of the show. Not many people know that O'Brien used to be an officer with the Carmel Police Department in Carmel, Indiana. Kelly Clarkson was invited onto the show by Nathan Fillion during an episode of The Kelly Clarkson Show. Despite confessing to be a bad actor, Clarkson has stated that The Rookie is one of her favorite shows. Therefore, she agreed to appear in the pre-credit scene of Season 5, Episode 12, Death Notice.
Take a look at it.
Wesley Evers' actor, Shawn Ashmore, was originally brought on as a temporary love interest for Angela. However, his character's popularity, as well as his chemistry with Alyssa Diaz, encouraged the writers to eventually promote him to a main cast member from season 3 onwards. Speaking of Lopez, some fans have pointed out a missed opportunity by not referring to Evers and Lopez as lovers instead of Lopez. To pass the time in between filming, the actors sing along to the radio in their cars. Shawn Ashmore and Derek Augustine, who plays Officer Miles Penn, both have an identical twin brother, with Shawn Ashmore's twin Aaron similarly being an accomplished actor. Aaron is currently playing Gil in the Netflix show Ginny and Georgia. The teasing and competitive nature of Tim and Lucy's relationship was brought about when the writers noticed a similar dynamic between Eric Winter and Melissa O'Neil. By the time that Nolan graduated, Tim and Lucy were the only original TO and rookie pair that were still around. Throughout the first season, Nolan, Chen, and West were constantly being reminded that one of 3 rookies wash out. Lopez even goes as far to say, odds are either you, Chen, or Nolan won't be here in a year. Little over a year later, West is killed in the line of duty. Before becoming a training officer, Nolan originally wanted to become a detective. While this desire shifts to him becoming a TO, the show found a way to honor this original desire, as during the season 7 finale, John is temporarily promoted to detective for 48 hours. The term BOOT is an acronym for barely out of training. On their first day together, Bradford taunts Chen by saying that he's been shot and she needs to know where they are to call for help. This foreshadows the very next day when he actually gets shot and Chen needs to radio for help. Bradford's taunting of rookies is quite common between training officers, as a way of preparing rookies for the unpredictability of the job, as well as a hazing ritual. Eric Winter considered becoming a firefighter during a break in his acting career. Tim Bradford has the habit of holding a door open for other people, but this habit wasn't scripted. It's just a trait that Eric Winter does in real life. Casting directors were hesitant to see Eric Winter for the role of Tim Bradford, fearing that he was too nice to portray such a tough character. But Alexi Hawley saw his audition, and he believes that Winter was right for the job, as he was able to depict Bradford's hidden vulnerabilities underneath his tough persona. Rosalind Dyer isn't Annie Wersing's first experience playing a serial killer, as she also played a serial killer on Nathan Fillion's other show, Castle. As well as playing an officer on The Rookie, Nathan Fillion is also known for appearing in huge superhero films such as Guardians of the Galaxy. On top of that, Nathan Fillion has starred with Marcia Monroe, who plays Isabel Bradford in The Rookie, in Uncharted, a live-action fan film. Fans can look forward to seeing Nathan Fillion as Green Lantern on July 11, 2025, in James Gunn's new Superman film. Speaking of superheroes, Liseth Chavez has also been a part of a superhero series, Legends of Tomorrow. Throughout the first season, Nolan's training officer, Talia Bishop's primary arc focused on her desire to become a detective as soon as possible. However, following Afton's departure from the show after season 1, the writers instead used a similar storyline for Angela Lopez, eventually allowing her to become a detective in season 3. Nolan's new training officer, Nyla Harper, often uses her experiences to guide her rookie. This is shown when Nyla attempts to help Lucy deal with her trauma after her kidnapping ordeal, revealing that she was assaulted by her case officer while she was undercover. Before appearing in The Rookie, 3 of the main actors played love interests of one another. Surprisingly, Eric Winter played the love interest for Mekia Cox, who played Nyla Harper. The 2 appeared in the show Secrets and Lies, playing Nell Oliver and Amanda Warner. Eric also played the interest of Jenna Dewan's character in the TV show Witches of East End. On top of this, Cox and Winter appeared in Strawberries and Cream Part 1, but the 2 of them never shared any screen time. Creator Alexi Hawley is also known for creating other crime shows such as State of Affairs and The Recruit, both of which following CIA agents instead of police officers. Melissa O'Neil didn't have her driver's license when she booked The Rookie. Therefore, she was encouraged by producers to get her license as they couldn't allow her to drive on the show until she got her license. Melissa O'Neil has also landed a bunch of roles in iconic musicals, such as the 2012 Broadway revival of Jesus Christ Superstar, as well as Les Miserables. During the first season, Melissa O'Neil lived in an Airbnb, as she stated that she would only move to Los Angeles if she got work. Eventually, she moved permanently to LA for the show's second season. A running gag in the show is having a character request to chat with someone on a backup channel, and everyone would switch over to that channel to eavesdrop. Eric Winter is the only actor who is always wearing a vest under his uniform. The other actors only have them on when the scene requires it, due to the heaviness of the vest, but Winter requested to wear it to help with the authenticity of the character. Now that's commitment. This authenticity can sometimes cause problems for the show. For example, when shooting on location around Los Angeles, the actors are typically mistaken for real-life police officers by members of the public. To avoid this, during their breaks, they will take off their duty belt and cover their uniform with a jacket. The green shotgun that they get from the kit room is specifically designated for non-lethal ammunition such as beanbag rounds. Leah Harper, Nyla's daughter, is played by Mekhi Cox's actual daughter. Liseth Chavez, who plays Selena Juarez, also played a police officer in Chicago PD. She appears on the 7th season of the show, playing Officer Vanessa Rojas. Selena's nickname, Ms. Cleo, is a reference to the TV psychic of the same name. While Liseth was 33 during filming, her character Selena Juarez was 25 when she joined the LAPD. During one of Chavez's first scenes, instead of stating her character's name as Selena Juarez, she mistakenly says Selena Gomez instead, causing the cast and crew to burst out with laughter. One of the show's writers, Frederick Cotto, was an officer for 18 years, and even became a sergeant for internal affairs. Cotto worked undercover for many years, and his experience undercover has inspired many of the undercover storylines. The cold open of Season 1, Episode 7, The Ride-Along, has a girl named Cadence Patton fulfill her acting dream as part of her Make-A-Wish. In the episode, she plays a fictional version of herself who gets to be a cop for a day. Lucy jumping from her car to a pickup truck to apprehend a criminal in the Season 6 finale was based upon an actual event by one of the writers who was a former cop. David Rowden, the show's stunt coordinator, has been nominated for a Primetime Emmy 3 times. The death of Captain Anderson was one of the show's saddest moments, and she had become a fan favorite due to her supporting Nolan in the first season. But the storyline was ultimately written because the writers wanted to depict the seriousness and unpredictability of police work and show the real dangers involved. Harper's initial nickname for Nolan was 5%, as she received a 5% pay bump for becoming a training officer. Furthermore, when Harper is assigned to train Aaron Thorson, she nicknames him 5 Minutes. This is because 5 minutes is how long she thinks he'll last before quitting the program. Bradford also nicknames Tamara as Chen's puppy, due to how Chen helped her get back on her feet. In return, Tamara nicknames Tim Officer Zaddy due to his attractive appearance. Jenna Dewan plays Bailey, which happens to also be the name of her character's cat in The Resident. As actress Jenna Dewan is an accomplished dancer in real life, the writers decided to make reference to her background. During Season 4, Episode 16, Real Crime, it is revealed that Bailey was a background dancer for the fictional group Flex and Flow. Nolan has the highest hostage count at 14. His latest abduction involves being captured by Oscar Hutchinson in the Season 7 finale. During raid scenes, the background officers are often played by actual cops. None of the uniformed officers in the series wear shooting brass on their uniforms. These are medals that officers wear that represent their shooting abilities. There is a massive plot hole in the show that are involving the documentary episodes. Since the officers are appearing in these documentaries, this would mean that they would be unable to do undercover work. But the show ignores this fact and continues to produce these documentaries anyways. The Season 7 documentary episode marks the 100th appearance for Mekhi Cox as Nyla Harper. In the first few episodes of Season 6, Aaron Thorson refers to a friend of his as Little Gherkin. This is the real-life name for an artist who has produced one amateur hip-hop song named The Price Is Wrong. The Rookie has welcomed many stars from Nathan Fillion's previous shows. During a Comic-Con panel, Fillion revealed one previous co-star who would like to appear in The Rookie. He revealed that he would love it if his Firefly co-star, Gina Torres, would appear on the show. Torres has also expressed interest in appearing on the show, and Alexi Hawley has gone as far as to state that if Gina came on board, he'd have her and Nathan interact on the show. The Rookie has also welcomed 85 crew members, including directors, writers, and producers, who have collaborated on Castle in the first 2 seasons of the show. The most notable example is Mark Gordon, who worked as a producer on both shows. Like their characters, Eric Winter and Derek Augustine both played football in high school. The Season 7 premiere marked a huge accomplishment for the show, as The Rookie scored a new all-time high for episode views on streaming, based on the first 7 days of viewing across all platforms. Madeline Coughlin, who plays Abigail, is also a writer for the show. Lucy Chen is multilingual, as through the course of the show, Chen is shown speaking Spanish and Cantonese. Additionally, in the episode 5 Minutes, she mentions that she taught herself French to be able to follow Aaron Thorson's trial. Tim's dog Kojo is played by Macklin, and he is the same dog who appeared in other shows such as Modern Family and Young Sheldon. After over 50 years of police shows that feature internal affairs officers, The Rookie chose to take a different approach to portraying internal affairs within police work. The episode Consequences features Nolan being investigated by internal affairs. While internal affairs is often shown as the enemy of police officers, the show highlights the complexity of them and their role in regulating the actions of police officers. The episodes Under Siege and Greenlight are tied for the highest rated episode of The Rookie, at 9.0 on IMDb. The Rookie Feds, however's highest rated episode is only 7.4, showing why the show got canceled. Despite Feds being canceled, characters such as Matthew Garza have continued to appear in the main show. James Murray and Simone Clark knew each other prior to the events of The Rookie. The two met in high school but lost contact after Simone left for college. The Rookie's Instagram has approximately 1 million followers to date. Eric Winter has a podcast with his wife, Rosalind Sanchez, called He Said Ayadio. Patrick Kelleher, who played Seth Ridley, first encountered the show through the viral TikTok of Daddy Cop by Xander Hawley. Season 7 saw the return of Xander Hawley as Raj Bronson. Outside the show, Xander is a talented musician who currently has about 500,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. Many fans have praised the show for its portrayal of Jackson West as a gay character, stating that it was natural and an example of positive representation. However, since West's departure, there has not been any other examples of LGBTQ+ representation on the show. Hopefully, as the show goes on, there will be more opportunities to represent LGBTQ+ experiences. The cold openings of the show usually feature Nolan on patrol, encountering bizarre and funny situations. The show has experimented with storytelling using various cameras such as body cams, dash cams, shop cams, and phone cameras. St. Vincent's Medical Center is used as the setting for Shaw Memorial Hospital in the show. However, after Grace Sawyer's exit, the hospital isn't ever mentioned again. The majority of the cops on the show have Apple phones, while antagonists such as Monica Stevens use Samsung products. This is often a form of unconscious branding, which is typically used in many films and TV shows. The show is hoping to bring back Pete Davidson for season 8, who plays Nolan's half-brother Pete, as he has not been seen since the season 4 finale. Alexi Hawley has hinted at a few potential storylines for the upcoming season 8. Some include the next romantic chapter for Chenford, a new role for Wesley as district attorney, and what Monica Stevens' return means for the LAPD. While an official return has yet to be announced, ABC has revealed that The Rookie will be a part of the mid-season slate. This means that season 8 will likely premiere in January 2026. With that long of a wait, make sure to subscribe and leave a like on this video to see more content about The Rookie until then. The Rookie is one of my favorite shows of all time, and I love taking every opportunity I get to glaze the show, but I'm not gonna lie and say that it's perfect. So today, I'm gonna switch things up and talk about everything I personally do not like about The Rookie and explain why I feel this way. And stay tuned, because some of these may be some pretty hot takes. The first thing I want to talk about, or I guess the first person I want to talk about, is Monica Stevens and how much I loathe her storyline. Look, I thought Monica was an interesting addition to the show when she was first introduced, being the crooked lawyer that gave Elijah whatever he wanted when Wesley couldn't. And then adding the fact that she was Wesley's ex-fiance, I actually really liked it. But then when Elijah was defeated and she moved on to being a centimillionaire criminal mastermind, I started to lose my patience with her. Every episode that passed, her storyline just got more and more ridiculous to the point where it wasn't even intriguing anymore. And now we're heading into season 8, and not only is she still here, but she has immunity? How in the world is this plot ever going to be solved? She's basically become the ruler of the world when it comes to the show, and I hate this so much. I'm hoping that she's killed off within the first couple episodes of the new season, because if not, I'm gonna lose a lot of interest in what's going on in the main plot of the show. The next thing I want to talk about that I really dislike about the show is how they've really started to neglect the other couples of the show for Chenford. I am a massive Lopez fan, and I have been ever since I first started watching the show. Watching them grow not only as a couple, but also as individuals was amazing to see, and I became more glued to their story. But as Chenford started to form, Lopez, along with every other couple, started being pushed towards the sidelines to show Tim and Lucy instead. Listen, I am not a Chenford hater, and I am not trying to say that they shouldn't be a thing, but their relationship has caused the showrunners to neglect the rest. When was the last time we really got to see growth come from Nyla and James' relationship? What about Lopez? Bailey and Nolan haven't been neglected as much, but I'm pretty sure that is because it involves Nolan, who's the main character of the whole show. But the other two couples especially have been neglected to shine a light on Tim and Lucy instead. I have a couple other gripes with Chenford, but we'll get back to those later. Let's move on to the third thing that I dislike about the show, and that is that I feel like the terrible timeline breaks the immersion of the show for me. Maybe I'm taking the show a little too seriously when I complain about this, but I think there's way too many inconsistencies involving the timeline that just make me more confused than anything else. One of my biggest gripes with the timeline involves ages, since there's some age discrepancies that literally break the lore of some characters. Let me bring up the biggest examples, which are John and Henry Nolan, as well as the age difference between the two. When the show began, John Nolan was said to be a 45-year-old man, and it's also mentioned that his son, Henry, was born when he was 20 years old. But this gets annihilated as soon as Henry is introduced, as when we meet him in season 1, he is 20 years old. This is an issue because he's supposed to be 25 at this time, but in the matter of half a season, they already break the timeline. Okay, whatever. They got an age wrong. Not a big deal. But then they decide to change the age of Henry between episodes. In one episode, he's 20 years old. In the next episode, he's 19 years old. And then he's 20 again after that. How does any of that make any sense at all? Now back to John. Like I mentioned earlier, he's supposed to be 45 years old in the pilot, which takes place in 2018. But now in season 7, he's 49 years old, despite it taking place in 2025. This means he is aged 4 years within the last 7 years in the show. I think I've rambled enough about ages, so let me just talk about another timeline issue that really grinds my gears. We need to talk about Selena Juarez and the tragedy that is her timeline. She is introduced in season 5 of the show, which takes place in 2021 according to the timeline. But according to season 6, it jumps all the way to 2024. And like I mentioned earlier, season 7 takes place in 2025. Why is this all important? Because this would imply that Selena Juarez has been a rookie for 3 to 4 years rather than the 12 months it usually takes. Having a rookie stay a rookie for multiple seasons isn't a novel concept though, since they did this back in seasons 1 to 3 with John, Lucy, and Jackson. But the difference with them is that those seasons took place over the span of the same 13-month period. Now that they have this massive time jump between the seasons, it makes her probationary period absolutely ridiculous. And I'm hoping they don't do the same thing with Miles. Okay, I'm sure you don't want me complaining about the timeline anymore, so I'm just gonna move on. Let's go back to Chenford. I have to talk about Chenford and how I heavily dislike the writing of the couple, as well as the writing of their story. Like I said earlier, I do not hate Chenford as a concept, nor either of the characters. I actually really like both Tim and Lucy, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't notice some negative changes in their characters and storylines that came from Chenford being introduced. Earlier on in the show's run, Tim was a very rigid, strict TO that was emotionally guarded and had his walls up. This was such a good contrast when interacting with everyone else, especially with Lucy, who needed that type of figure during her training. His rigidness also was super funny when interacting with characters like Lopez, who would just get on his nerves.
I got your back, boo.
But when he got with Lucy and even after the relationship, no matter how hard he tried with Miles and others, that tough guy persona just wasn't the same anymore since he started to soften up. This personality change I honestly don't mind as much, since it's less one-dimensional and makes him more of a dynamic character. But where I really don't like the personality changes with Chenford is the changes with Lucy. It feels like after Lucy and Tim got together, Lucy just kind of became Tim's second half, and the show was taking away her personal agency. She worked so hard during the first half of the show and had to overcome so much, but it feels like it's all being overshadowed with Chenford. This is all too common in shows, where the woman of a ship will get overshadowed by the relationship rather than being known for her own accomplishments. And I think that Lucy deserves way better than that, as she's one of the best characters in the whole show. Now to talk about how they're writing Chenford's story. I hate what they're doing with Chenford right now. Everything they did during season 7 really grinded my gears, because instead of giving them any actual development and building on their story, they would just tease the audience with little snippets to get them hyped up and ready to watch the next episode. Yet as episodes passed, nothing of actual substance ever actually happened. The biggest example of this was in season 7, episode 15, A Deadly Secret. Remember how they were locked down in the hospital and were talking about baby names in their relationship? I do. Do you remember what this information ended up leading to? I don't. Oh wait, it didn't lead to anything. That is my gripe. They're writing Chenford stuff just to keep the audience on their toes on whether they'll get back together or not, and then never actually give us anything. I get Chenford being in the show, but Alexi, please just give us something of substance for once. Alright, I feel like I've said enough about Chenford, so I'm just going to move on to the next thing that I really don't like about the show. This one may be more popular than others in this video, but I'm going to say it anyway. The more that I rewatch The Rookie for these videos, the more I dislike Bailey, her background, her personality, and her relationship with Nolan as a whole. And each one of these things is for different reasons. I hate how she basically can do anything. She isn't just part of the LAFD, she is the LAFD. She is everywhere. Do they need a paramedic? Bailey. Do they need a firefighter? Bailey. Do they need a dancer? Bailey, I guess. I don't understand why she needs to have everything under her belt. She is fine as just a firefighter, maybe with some military experience under her belt. Oh wait, she's a lieutenant in the reserves too. I don't get why they had her do so much. Now onto her personality. I think that she is so flat. The way that she talks to people, including Nolan, just feels forced and has no genuinity attached to it. I remember back in my tier list video, I mentioned that I think Nolan and Bailey are good together, but the more that I watch them, the more I disagree with my previous opinion. They have pretty much no chemistry at all. And what makes it even worse is that Nolan dated more than one woman that would have been much better suited for him. By far, Grace Sawyer would have been the best match with Nolan. I thought they had amazing chemistry, and when I first watched the show, I thought they would have been endgame. That is until the show decided to call it quits, for some reason. I never really understood why they broke Nolan and her up, but I think it was a disservice to John's story. And if they didn't turn Jessica into some weird psycho who killed a suspect without any lethal force sent her way, she could have been a good match for Nolan too. But then they threw that away with what I mentioned above, as well as the whole kids thing. And then Lucy, no, that deserved to end the way it did. Anyway, I think you could see that I don't like Bailey, and I think this opinion will only get stronger the more I rewatch this show. Moving on, I want to talk about something involving Captain Anderson, and I did gloss over this a little bit in my video that I made about her and her story, which I'll leave a link to at the end of this one as well as in the description. But the one part of her story that I didn't like was the way that it ended. Look, I think that the way she went out was great. I think killing her off the way that they did was amazing for Officer Nolan's story and to give him motivation to be a better cop. However, a counterpoint I want to make is why did they do it so damn early into the show? We only saw her for 16 episodes before she was killed off. There was so much that we never learned about her, and this is partially because the show just didn't give us enough time with her. I also think that her death would have been more impactful not only for Nolan, but also for the audience if they killed her off towards the time that they killed off Nick Armstrong, like around the end of season 2 or the beginning of season 3. The show missed the opportunity to get the audience extremely attached to this character, learning about all of her death and her backstory, and then killing her off. I love her and her story, but the timing kind of ruins it for me. I know that I've been pretty critical about some aspects of the show during this video, but I just want to reiterate that I love this show very much, and I wouldn't make videos about it if I didn't. I'm just hoping that the showrunners can fix some of these things in the next season, like the Monica Stevens plotline and the dragging of Chenford, but I guess we'll just have to see. That is everything that I hate about The Rookie. The Rookie is a show that has some of the craziest storylines in television, but not all of these storylines were completely made up. There are a few episodes in the show's history that are based on true events, or at least loosely connected to them. And today, we're going to talk about every instance where the Rookie took inspiration from a real-life event. Before I jump into specific episodes though, I think it would be a disservice if I didn't talk about the entire show's premise being connected to real-life events. The backstory of the main character, John Nolan, is based off a real-life person named William Norcross, who dropped his career within his family's printing business while in his mid-40s to pursue becoming a police officer for the LAPD. He had decided to leave small-town Pennsylvania to move all the way to Southern California to make this happen, just like John Nolan did. This all took place a couple of years before the pilot of The Rookie was recorded. And while a couple of the details are different, such as John Nolan being in construction instead of printing, it's still very clear that the character was based off William Norcross's life. Interestingly, Norcross works for the show as a consultant in order to make sure everything in the show is up to procedure and as accurate as they can be. However, he still is with the LAPD full-time and was actually promoted to sergeant back in 2023. So does that mean Nolan will eventually become a sergeant? I guess we'll just have to see. I also want to talk about another character's backstory, as it also is based off of real-life events, and I think this one is even more interesting. The backstory of Aaron Thorson is completely based off a real-life case that happened back in 2007, and the parallels are clear as day. The real-life event that correlates with his story is the case of Amanda Knox, a woman who had called the police after coming back to her apartment that she shared with a roommate named Meredith Kircher, who was found dead on the floor of the apartment's locked bathroom. Amanda was promptly arrested along with her boyfriend and her employer, and she was sentenced to 26 years in prison for the murder. This trial made international headlines, and they portrayed Amanda Knox in a horrible light, and her reputation was ruined. She kept appealing, and eventually she was exonerated of the crime. But unfortunately, her reputation was already tarnished, and she still talks about the situation to this day. Aaron Thorson's case is very similar to this, finding his friend dead in their home, getting charged with the murder, and then getting exonerated after all of the mistrials. But there are a few key differences to point out. Number one, which is the obvious one, Knox and Kircher were women, whereas Aaron and Patrick were men. Number two, Knox became famous because of this incident, while Aaron was already famous beforehand. And number three, Knox didn't end up joining the police because of what happened, whereas Aaron did. And while these are some pretty key differences, the more important parts are exactly the same. Having their lives ruined by a heinous accusation, as well as having highly publicized cases that had a massive role in shaping the public's opinion about both of them. Now that we got both of those character backstories out of the way, I can start talking about episodes that have events that are based on real life. The first episode I want to talk about is the most recent one in Season 7, Episode 16, The Return. And we're talking about the Tulsa and Amy situation where they drove their car into the water while live streaming to thousands of fans. The reason I'm talking about this is because this plotline takes clear inspiration from the Jack Doherty situation that happened where he was driving his $200,000 McLaren while live streaming, and he was reading his chat and checking his phone while he was driving, just like Tulsa and Amy were doing. This resulted in him crashing it while still live streaming, just like Tulsa and Amy. And while this part of it is similar, they decided to take a different approach with the aftermath. While Jack Doherty was scrutinized and raked over the coals by everyone online, including his own subscribers, Tulsa and Amy were arrested and all of their fans came to their support instead of being against them. Eventually, the fans do end up turning on Tulsa, but not because of this situation, but rather because Amy threw him under the bus to jumpstart her own brand. Our next event happened a few episodes before this, back in Season 7, Episode 10, Chaos Agent. What we're about to talk about is something I didn't even know about until a few lovely users on Reddit named HouseFirm3552 and Lobster Puppy told me about this situation. This episode is the whole episode circling around Zuzu and the three girls who were in the woods. In this episode, the original story is that the three girls were attacked by a large masked man who wanted to kill them, and that Grace was not going to make it. But that's only what Ava and Charlotte hoped would happen, because in reality, the other two girls were responsible for trying to murder Grace. Their stories were almost exactly identical word for word, and the police started to get suspicious. After searching the girls' technology, they discovered that Ava and Charlotte were talking about the Grace murder for quite a bit of time, especially with a demon named Zuzu. Zuzu ended up just being an AI, but it was enough to trick the girls. Now you may be wondering, what could this possibly be related to in real life? Let's jump back to May 31st, 2014, where two 12-year-old girls named Anissa Wire and Morgan Geyser lured their friend named Peyton Lutner into the woods near a local park around them. They then proceeded to stab her 19 times in order to prove that Slenderman was real. Then they left her for dead. Luckily, Peyton ended up surviving the attack and she was found by a cyclist nearby. What's even scarier about this story is that according to Wikipedia, the two girls showed no remorse for doing what they did, similarly to Ava and Charlotte, saying that the attack was a necessity. Once again, thanks to those Reddit users for bringing this to my attention. Next up, we're gonna head back in time a little bit more to season 7, episode 8, Wildfire. And while this one is technically based off real life events, it's not based on the exact event that this ended up being connected to by the fanbase. There isn't an exact wildfire event or date that the episode is based off of, but this entire episode goes over the typical evacuation procedure that Los Angeles has when there's a wildfire in the area. This isn't exactly an uncommon occurrence, so it was only a matter of time before the Rookie made their own story involving a Los Angeles wildfire. I wouldn't have put this on the list if it was just about this, but the timing in which this episode came out made this episode worth mentioning, as the week that this episode released, there were active wildfires happening in Los Angeles. This obviously was not the show's intention, as the episode was scheduled for a specific date, and switching them around would not be possible, as it would completely screw up the timeline and the cohesiveness of the main story. The show decided to turn this unfortunate and coincidental timing into a good thing though, as this episode brought awareness to the wildfires happening in Los Angeles, and the show was able to get more attention headed towards charities who were helping people who were victims of the wildfires. Overall, I thought this was worth a mention, but let's get back to specific events now. Moving on to our next event, we need to head all the way back to season 2, with season 2, episode 6, Fallout. This was the episode that involved the impending missile attack, as well as the alert that went out with it. This whole plot started while Nolan was in the courtroom, and everyone in there started receiving an alert on their phone that an impending missile attack was on its way to Los Angeles, which would kill the entire city. Panic ensues across the entire city, especially in the courtroom. And with Oscar there, he didn't exactly help with some of the comments he was making.
Panic. What if it's not fake? Well, then you got about 28 minutes until you find out what hell feels like.
Eventually, Nolan and Jessica are able to get everyone into the bomb shelter, even if the judge tried to keep them locked out at first. Later, it's revealed that this entire alert was a false alarm, and everyone's able to safely leave the courthouse. What makes this episode different compared to the other ones on this list is that Nolan actually references the real-life event within this episode, while all of the others do not. The year before this episode took place, on January 13th, 2018, a real-life missile alert was sent out to the entire state of Hawaii, causing not just the entire state of Hawaii to panic, but as well as the entire rest of the nation, as there was no way to evacuate everyone from an island state in such a short amount of time. Even the phrasing, "seek immediate shelter, this is not a drill," at the end of each alert is the exact same between the real-life event and the Rookie episode. A key difference, however, was that instead of the missile landing in 29 minutes, the real-life missile alert did not have a time attached to it, adding to the panic that happened in real life. The actual event lasted about 38 minutes, as the government then sent out another alert saying that the earlier one was a miscommunication that was made during a drill. Interestingly though, the Rookie did a good job highlighting one thing that was similar to the real-life event. Instead of immediately taking shelter like the alert said to, most people in real life, as well as the episode, began to call their loved ones instead, as people thought that this was more important than seeking shelter. And with that, those were all of the episodes of The Rookie that were based off real-life events. There are 7 specific characters on The Rookie that are perfect examples of the 7 deadly sins. But on the flip side, there's another 7 characters that embodied the opposite, the 7 heavenly virtues. In this video, we're going to be comparing the Rookie characters that embody the 7 deadly sins against their contradicting heavenly virtues. We're going to be starting with greed versus charity. The Rookie character that exemplifies greed the most is Oscar Hutchinson, someone who only cares about himself and what he can gain, and he will do anything to get it, even if it means helping some truly despicable people. Oscar is a sociopath, someone who cannot comprehend what it feels like to feel empathy for others and doubles that into his own self-worth. One of the craziest offenses that show his greed the most is when he helps Monica get information on the employer of the assailant who tried to kill her. He, along with Jason Weiler, beat a man half to death for this information, all in exchange to be able to escape prison. Meanwhile, this information made Monica extremely powerful and has allowed her to do much more damage down the line. But this didn't matter to Oscar. It doesn't concern him. It was never even a thought in his mind. And that's because he's full of greed. Meanwhile, on the other side, Aaron Thorson falls into the definition of charity. While Aaron is extremely rich and finds value in materialistic things, this doesn't mean he only uses it for himself. In multiple occasions, Aaron has been selfless with his money and resources, as well as he doesn't hesitate to use his money to assist with cases. One example of using his money selflessly in order to help a case is in Season 5, Episode 1. This was when Tim and Lucy were supposed to get on a plane to Vegas for their undercover operation, which was not in their playbook and an extremely dangerous situation. This is because the LAPD couldn't get a flight in time to give them backup, basically leaving Tim and Lucy in the dark if things go sideways. But Aaron steps in and uses his private jet to get the LAPD to Vegas in time, marking a very selfless and expensive act, and this proves that Aaron is full of charity.
Pulling the plug.
Oh, wait, hold on. The pilot has to file a flight plan.
Paperwork to get that authorized will take all day, and your wheel's up in an hour.
I mean, I can get a private jet there in 45 minutes. Also, what kind of caviar do you guys like?
Now we're moving on to sloth versus diligence. The person who embodies sloth in The Rookie the most is Officer Schmitty, a seasoned officer who does everything in his power to do the least work he can. From the very beginning of the show, despite working at the department for 20 years, he finds every way to do the most menial jobs. He works front desk, he takes the lowest level of calls, and when he actually is on a higher level call, he's borderline useless and does the least amount of heavy lifting possible. Up until Nolan became the union representative, Smitty was the union rep, but even in that position, he did very little work. This is evident during the union rep election, where in the video that Tamara snuck in, Smitty full on admits that he doesn't do anything, as he says he can't beat Nolan on the issues. He really only does this job because it's easy work.
Making things right.
So, what do you want this video to be?
Something embarrassing for Nolan. I can't beat the guy on the issues. I gotta play dirty to beat him. That's not me. She said she wasn't recording. There's no expectations of privacy here.
In most scenes we see him in during the show, he's doing literally nothing productive. Like when he was taking bets on Tim and Lucy's breakup in Season 6, instead of, you know, actually doing work.
You still taking bets on the breakup?
You know it.
$100 says Tim cheated.
You sure? It's running 5 to 1 against.
Yeah, bigger risk, bigger reward.
What are you doing?
I was never even here.
Smitty may be lazy, but someone who is the opposite is John Nolan, the representative of diligence, meaning he is devoted and dedicated to painstaking work in order to meet his goals. Nolan, from the very beginning, had to endure an uphill battle in his career, with Sergeant Gray making it his mission for Nolan to quit. Bishop initially looking for any reason to wash him out, he had many obstacles to get to where he is now. Another massive obstacle is when he was reprimanded in Season 1, then being informed that he will never make it past being a P2 in his career. Anyone else would have either quit or make do with what they had. But this didn't stop Nolan. He gave his 100% at all times, and all of this work ended up paying off. As in Season 5, Episode 1, he was given a golden ticket for his work at the border.
In light of your courageous and exemplary service, I've decided to offer you any assignment in the LAPD. It's what we unofficially call a golden ticket.
Thank you, ma'am.
Despite being told he would never amount to anything, as well as with people preying on his downfall, he still managed to persevere, giving him the spot as a heavenly virtue. But someone who is a deadly sin, the sin of pride, is Rosalind Dyer, the psychopathic killer who believes she is the best of the best in what she does. She emits a sense of confidence that cannot be compared to anyone else on the show, and it's to a point where her confidence was part of her own demise. What do I mean by that? Let's go to her last episode, Season 5, Episode 4, The Choice, where her pride literally ended her life. She made a contraption to kill Nolan's fiance, Bailey, in order to coax Nolan into doing what she wants. She forces Nolan to go to a mansion where they would have dinner, and at the end of this dinner, Rosalind played a live feed of Bailey's inevitable death, according to her. In order for Nolan to save her, he has to kill Rosalind in order to turn him into a murderer. She was so confident in this plan working, but she ended up being wrong. Nolan didn't kill her, and she was arrested. Even though she would have died either way, her overconfidence in her plans made her have to resort to this, making her a very prideful, sinful woman. However, someone who isn't sinful and represents humility is Officer Bishop, even if she wasn't always that way. Talia started off as someone who was very by the books and followed all orders given, including Gray's orders to make Nolan's training as hard as possible. However, eventually, Bishop gives Nolan a bigger leash, and she is surprisingly impressed with what she sees. She sees somebody with a different set of life experience and skills, and she is stood corrected. She begins to admire his work and realize she was wrong, showing a sense of humility and making it onto this list. Now, before we move on to our next set, I've decided to lump two sets of couples into these groups instead of individual people. We are now going over lust versus chastity, starting with Jake and Sava as the embodiment of lust. Lust describes an intense desire of sexual intimacy and relations, and these two fit the bill to a T. In almost every scene they're in, they are all over each other, making out, hands in places that are at best inappropriate, and at worst, they're disgusting in terms of public display of affection. These desires don't even just stop with their own relationship, because they also have caused each other to break the sanctity of their relationship by cheating on each other. Her best friend, who was previously seen when he was released from prison due to overcrowding. This ended up coming with a price because Sava was so enraged that she killed him, and Jake's body is found in the episode Double Trouble. This wouldn't have happened if Jake and Sava's relationship wasn't built on lust. But do you know whose relationship was built on chastity? Gray and Luna, the most stable and loving relationship in the show. Chastity doesn't mean to abstain from sexual relationships as a whole, but rather is to have those relationships built on love, genuine feelings, and respect for one another. This perfectly describes the long-term marriage of Lieutenant Gray and Luna. Every time they're seen together, they treat each other with love and kindness, and they are not overly affectionate in public, staying away from what are considered lustful actions. This also stems down to their daughter, who benefits from their healthy relationship as well. Watching their scenes alongside Jake and Sava is a night and day comparison with how a relationship can benefit from more wholesome actions versus ones filled with lust. And that's why they fall here on this list. Next up, we will be talking about envy and putting it up against kindness. On the sinful side, we have Officer Penn as envious. While this isn't exactly true after Season 7, Episode 13, in the beginning of that episode, however, Penn is extremely envious of his old friend AJ Knox, as well as envious about his current life and career versus where he could have been if he was able to still continue football. Before joining the LAPD, Miles was on track to be a professional football player. Unfortunately, he was injured while playing and had to quit entirely. Luckily, he eventually healed and joined the LAPD, and he was fine until he reunited with AJ again, making him jealous. He could have had the same lifestyle, the cars, the parties, the women, but now he can't have that, and he found himself comparing his life to AJ's. He was envious of him, to the point where when he was offered the chance to share that lifestyle with him by being private security for AJ, he really wanted to take it. Fortunately though, he didn't take it, as Tim talked him through it and Penn realized he didn't want that. Luckily for him, his envy subsided. On the other side of envy, we have kindness, and that goes to Lucy Chen. Lucy is a very polite, soft, and caring person who is nice to almost every person she meets. Of course, there's some exceptions for most criminals, but even with some criminals, she still shows compassion for those people. One example is with Tamara Collins, a teenager who steals her car so she can have a place to stay and or sell it for money, depending on when you asked her. Even though Tamara did this, Lucy took her under her wing and supported her. She bought her clothes, gave her money, and kept close tabs on her in the beginning. Eventually, in the Season 4 episode 5 Minutes, When Tamara got her life back on track, Lucy offered her a place to stay as her roommate, giving Tamara an even better chance of success. This is one of the kindest things a human can do for another, which is why I feel this alone should give her the virtue of kindness. Next, we are going to go over Wrath versus Patience. And for Wrath, I decided to go with Sandra de la Cruz, aka La Fiera. This Wrath was unleashed after the death of her son, but before that, she had reasons to keep it under lockdown. Before her son's death, she stayed out of the LAPD's way, and she had a sense of humanity and empathy. Despite her being a massive criminal, she still bonded with Detective Lopez over their shared motherhood, and her wrath got the better of her. When her wrath was unleashed, she was devastated. She was feeling the pain of losing her child, and she blamed Lopez for this loss. So in the ending episodes of season 3, she kidnaps Lopez, taking her to Guatemala to basically be an incubator for Lopez's baby, where once the baby is born, she would be killed and La Fiera would take the baby. This is incredibly cruel, and not even the most violent criminals would think to do this. This makes her a strong example for the sin of wrath. On the other side of the coin, an example for the virtue of patience is James, the husband of Officer Nyla Harper. He's an activist for police reform and is willing to make it happen in any way possible, but unlike some others who believe in police reform that want an immediate change, he believes in the long-term change. He is patient, wanting to do everything right despite it being the longer route. He wants to get police officers involved voluntarily, works for the community, and doesn't push on his wife to get things done faster. These are things that someone who is impatient would never do, and he shows a strong stance on doing things the right way. This is what lands him in the virtue of patience. Now for the next sin and virtue, which are gluttony and temperance. For this one, I'll be doing something a little different for gluttony. Instead of talking about the character, we're going to be talking about the actor of Jackson West, aka Titus Mackin Jr. Gluttony isn't just about food, but rather an unhealthy indulgence where nothing feels like enough. He forced a specific storyline into season 3 of the show by saying he was leaving the show and would only stay if they did said storyline. If they did it, he would stay for future seasons. This, however, was a lie. Season 3 was filmed during the height of the BLM movement, and both Titus and Richard Jones, the actor of Sergeant Gray, requested a storyline involving racial discrimination. They agreed, however, Titus wanted more. He wanted this storyline to last the majority of the season, as well as to have several subplots including racial discrimination as well. This made fans feel like the season was heavily politicized and caused the season to overall have a controversial reception even today. Once the season finished up and it was time to film season 4, Titus dipped and said he wasn't going to film anymore. This left the story writers high and dry, and they had to rewrite a lot of the show on very little notice. To add salt into the wound, he wouldn't even record a scene to kill his character off, and they needed a double for him for those scenes. This tarnished his reputation overall and shows that nothing would have ever been enough for a gluttonous actor like Titus. Now back to the characters. We head to the character who represents temperance the most, the Hammer. This may seem like a weird pick, but hear me out. Temperance is the quality of moderation or self-restraint. In the Hammer's case, it's his moderation of crime. There's some things he will do, such as gun trafficking. However, there's other things he won't do, such as betraying a police deal. There are 2 examples of this. One in season 6 episode appropriately named The Hammer. Hammer buys Nolan's wedding ring that Skip Tracer Randy stole and pawned off. Tim and Lucy go to retrieve it, and Hammer offers them to fight him for it. If they win, he'll give them the ring. Long story short, Tim wins the fight, and the Hammer hands it over with no argument. On the second occasion, in season 7's episode, The Mickey, when Mickey and him get caught trafficking guns, they're given a deal to rat out a bigger fish. Mickey tries to betray this deal by knocking Tim out and holding him at gunpoint, and he tells Hammer to get Nolan's gun and they can escape. But surprisingly, Hammer rejects this and beats up Mickey to save Tim because he wants his deal and to start a new life. This moderation and restraint of escape is what puts him in the temperance virtue. That's all 7 of the deadly sins and heavenly virtues with the rookie characters. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. Thanks for watching.